you miss me? I've been out of a comatose, but the depression is over.
Hello and welcome to Controlled Burns, the new hobby list podcast hosted by me, Slow Burn from Wildfire Gaming. And I'm thrilled this week to welcome a guest to the podcast, and that guest is none other than the other founder of Wildfire Gaming. Someone argue the most important founder of Wildfire Gaming, TreeTrunkSean.
Oh, shucks. There's no more important founding member.
Well, you could say that, but you were the one that did all of the editing and like basically all the work that went along with that podcast or that channel for so many years. So,
But if we look back at what I was doing with Let's Plays before the two of us did stuff together, the
right.
stuff that I could do by myself was so mediocre compared to what we could do together that I think the importance of your presence cannot be overstated.
Well, I appreciate that. But yeah, so it's great to be reunited with John. And we are going to go through his top 25 today. So we're going to be continuing the series that I introduced in episode 2 with mine. And then we brought in my wife Reagan and we got hers. It's going to be a lot of fun to hear Sean's in particular because I don't want to give anything away, but I had like a lot of influence on Reagan's top 25 just because she wasn't a huge gamer before we met. But with Sean, I've had very little influence on his top 25, if any at all. So like it is some very different picks than what you heard on the first couple episodes. So that's gonna be exciting. Um and you can listen to the show on pretty much all the major podcasting networks at this point. That includes Spotify, Apple, Amazon. Obviously, we post them on Wildfire Gaming on YouTube. And you can write into ControlledBurnes with an ES at gmail.com to have your email read on the show. But before we get into the list, I think it makes sense for us to chat a little bit and catch up with Tree Trunk Sean. Now, I mentioned in the first episode that he obviously we've gone through some life changes and him in particular since we were really I guess when was the last time that we recorded for the channel? Was that like kind of
Oh gosh, it was
2023?
probably in we may have done some last year, but it may have been 22 because Onyx was already very much born and kicking when we were doing our last videos, but
Right. Yeah,
I don't think I had my job yet. I think me getting a job was kind of the
that's
nail in
right.
the coffin of our regular uploading.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, because I remember you were while like toward the end there when we were doing some recording, you were looking around, right? And then yeah, you nailed the one. And is it still the same one where you have like the huge commute?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I commute from, this will mean nothing to most people, but I commute from New Boston to Longview 4 days a week.
Right. And that is like what? What's your
It's
average?
about an hour and a half each way.
Wow. So 3 hours in the car. So you must have a lot of time to listen to some podcasts.
Yes, and surprisingly, I don't really do it. I mostly listen to
Really?
Spotify DJ.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to imagine. I think the longest commute I've ever had was my first job out of college was at my hometown paper. And that was just kind of staying with my mom. This is after I moved back out of the house with you with Texarkana and because I got that job in Leonard. And so like I would commute, I think it was about 40 minutes. So like
Hmm.
basically both ways it would not even quite amount up to what you do one way. So yeah, it's hard. Just you had to get up like really early in the morning to deal with that.
No, miraculously, they actually count my commute as part of my on the clock
Oh,
time,
okay. Well,
which
that does help.
is yes, which is wonderful because it means I only have like a 5 hour workday, but it also makes my workday very stressful because I'm supposed to get the same amount of work done in 5 hours that my coworkers do in eight.
Sure, sure.
And have I explained to you at all what I do?
Sort of like, are you going to? Well, it's like a counseling type gig, right?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
a caseworker. In my role, I think the best way of describing it is if you were to combine the responsibilities of a counselor and a social worker into
Okay.
one job, because I go to people's houses. So really, I have a lot more than that commute that I have to do because I have to actually go to the people's houses, and
Gotcha.
basically I just ask them what's going on, and they tell me if they're having some emotional difficulties, then we have some counseling, or if they're wanting to work on getting a job, then I might like work on building a resume with them, something like that. basically, I work with people between the ages of 15 and 30 who have had an episode of psychosis, and my job is to try to keep them from having another episode of psychosis by helping them keep their lives healthy.
Right. Yeah. Very important job. And this is, it's interesting to see this be the path because, this is basically what you would expect someone with your major to do, right?
Yeah, but not what I expected for me to do. I
Right.
kind
Right.
of expected to, I thought the music thing was going to work out.
Yeah.
And it just has not. I'm in a band still, but
In Tex Arcana.
yes.
Okay.
But I highly doubt that. I don't think that we're exactly going to pick up and quit our jobs and suddenly be professional musicians.
Well, hey, if nothing else, at least you created the bumper music for Controlled Burns that gets used every week. So you got that.
That's exactly, my music career accomplished two very important things. It created the theme songs for this show,
Yes.
and it allowed me to meet my wife. And so I think
Hey,
I can call it a successful career.
absolutely. And I mean, there was the little stuff that we used for WGW wrestling back in the day as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, all those what is that song? It's like I always forget the title of it, but the one that we use for all the pay-per-views.
Um, Ethereal
Yeah,
Drift.
Ethereal Drift.
Wait,
Or is
that's the
that
name of the EP.
that's the name of the EP? Yeah, hang on, I'm gonna pull it up.
Supernatural Peace.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And actually I have a instrumental playlist that I use whenever I'm working because I have a much easier working situation in the sense that I work from home, but I do still I do a lot of writing and whatnot, and so like there's or even just research and things where I can have stuff on in the background, and so I do have a very large at this point instrumental playlist that I just kind of shovel through, and I do have that EP in there, so I actually hear that
Very
stuff,
nice.
fairly regularly.
I appreciate you're keeping my numbers alive. I
Yes.
sometimes will go and look at like how many monthly listeners I've got, and I've always got at least one.
Yeah, yeah, it's probably me. Yeah, I listened to Supernatural Peace. That is, I'm looking at your Spotify now. That is your number one, your most successful track, as it turns out. And that
Nice.
is probably because of I probably have some input on that just based on that playlist. But then also, honestly surprised that Brilliance is number six because I listened to that one quite a bit too. Especially if it comes on like when I'm doing a run. Like that's an amazing like run song.
Oh, that is excellent to hear.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm sure that the fact that it's the bumper music for this podcast is going to really drive up the numbers. So stay tuned. For
Yeah, the funny
listening.
thing, I I'm not sure if it's still number two on there. Let Go, my last
Yeah,
song that I put out. I have some clients who my coworkers have played that song for, and so I have some clients now who listen to my music,
nice.
and
Hey,
they have pumped up that one in particular and have told me that that song is the one that they really like.
yeah, I like that one too. Yeah, that's so I it's yeah, like it's kind of like the channel really in a lot of ways. It's like there's not like a huge audience that listen to it or watch it or whatever, but it's there for people that want to, and then it's also there for us to like go back and
Yes.
enjoy. So, and I do that with both music and the channel. So,
Yeah, wonderful time capsules.
yeah, and hopefully that's kind of what this podcast will end up being as well. That was kind of my idea behind it, and it was an excuse to talk to people more, not just you, but also just like the other people that I want to have on. And it was really kind of my wife's idea, but she's been talking about it for some time. But I do an actual like a podcast for work.
Yeah.
So like I don't actually have to edit that one, but I do, I already had the mic, and then I sort of like I knew that I would be able to pick up the audio editing fairly easily because I did do a little bit of editing in those awful classes with Dr. Demars
Yes.
in college, and that was actually like video editing with like Final Cut, I think. But and that honestly, just doing the audio, like it's what like I was kind of explaining to Sean what my setup is when I started, and like that was enough work where I feel like bringing in like video on top of that does seem like it kind of made me respect again the amount of work that you were dealing with with the channel, particularly whenever you were making edits and like bringing in text and all that kind of stuff.
You know, the thing is that once you get into it, though, it's a lot of fun, especially when you're
Yeah.
making videos like the Wildfire Gaming videos. Like, if we were doing something that wasn't so fun to make, maybe I would have minded doing all that.
Right.
But I actively miss doing that. Like, something that is probably not going to come to fruition, but something I dream about sometimes is transitioning into being a teacher so that I would have summers off
Oh
so
yeah.
that I could have a few months every year where I really focus on more artsy projects like
Sure.
doing more of our videos and whatnot. So maybe that's something that's on the cards someday. But the thing is, I actually get paid pretty well doing what I do, and teachers do not get paid pretty well doing what they do. So,
Yeah, I mean, and the fact, I mean, the commute does seem brutal, but I actually didn't know that you got credit, you got work credit for the commute itself. So I mean, that does help.
oh yeah, it helps a lot. I honestly, I don't know if I could have made it otherwise.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. I was just like, man, that just seems like something that he's really going to get burned out on. But you've been doing it now for what, like
Almost exactly a year.
yeah. So
I
there you
started October 10th last year.
yeah, so it probably was shortly before that when we stopped with the edit because we were I'm trying to even like remember because I think we were going pretty hard on Knights of the Old Republic 2. That was kind
Yes.
of like I felt like our main series, I guess, that we had going there.
That, and we had started playing through Bloodborne,
Oh
and
yeah.
we were also doing a third series, but I don't remember what that was off the
Well, we
top of
still
my head.
had I mean, it had been a while, but we still had Legend of Dragoon that we were still kind of working.
Yes, that was the third one.
Yeah. Which was that
Yep.
was yeah, all those were very fun. That would the it was shocking kind of how you know we there were some cracks in the design of Knights of the Old Republic 2 that maybe I don't know if I had remembered before our playthrough of that, but I was like, wow, this is it's maybe not quite as good as the first one, but it did lead to some pretty entertaining stuff from what I remember.
Oh yeah. Yeah, great playthrough.
Yeah,
And we
yeah,
had some of our biggest fans along the way.
right. I know. Yeah, I saw that I think I clicked on like our last upload and there was like at least one guy like kind of pining for them in the comments, but
Yes, said straight up, I miss your videos. And
yeah.
then what was funny to me is some other commenter thought it necessary to go, I do not miss your videos.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks for that update, pal. I mean, the
Like,
fact that he was cared enough to click on the video, that's interesting.
and the fact that he cared enough to type out the comment, it's like, you
Yeah.
know, maybe you like these a little more than you think, buddy. You're gonna
Yeah.
wake up in the middle of the night sometime in the 2030s wishing for these.
I know. Yeah, and honestly, they are like they're a good middle of the night video, really. Frankly, those
Yeah.
those whole things. I like. There's so many. And I like. I want to do a podcast where we kind of go down memory lane on the channel and like talk about our favorite stuff. But there's just so much of that stuff. And most recently, actually, I was going back and I was watching some of the one-offs, which I feel like I don't watch as often if when I'm going back to stuff. Usually, I'm in the mood for like a specific series that we did, but. Those one-offs too, like they were a lot of fun. I was like watching like the ones that we did on those. We pulled out like an old PS1 demo disc and we were kind of going through it
Oh
and
yeah.
making videos out of them, and that was a lot of fun.
And we heard from the world record holder of Blasto.
Yeah, that's right. Or was it? Ein there was the Einhanda or whatever. Like it was like some
Both,
bullet. Yeah,
actually.
yeah. People
We
like
heard
actually
from
like tuned.
the
I guess
record
probably
holders
not a
of
lot of
both.
people make videos on those games, and so like those small communities like really get excited whenever somebody posts something about it. Of course, we did not probably do them justice, but hey, yeah.
No, we just very, very much dipped our toes in it. I mean, they were demo discs, but
Right, right, yeah. But those are fun videos to look back on. It kind of helps me get back into that headspace of what it was like, where we were just like throwing shit together. We're like, hey, why don't we throw in a demo disc and just make some videos out of this?
yes, yes,
Okay. Well, was
very.
there anything else, like any other sort of lifestyle? I mean, I know that you obviously, I don't know how much we've talked about it on the channel, but obviously you were married when we were doing our sort of resurgence in 2022, so that's not really news. But then obviously Onyx, well, how old is Onyx at this point?
Onyx is 2 years old, coming
Wow.
up on 2.5,
Yeah.
and he is a little ball of energy. He's a smart kid. He says a lot more than I knew 2-year-olds could say. Like he
Really?
knows the shapes, and he can sometimes count to 10, and he
Wow.
knows the alphabet song, and he knows a lot of little, like he can tell you what colors things are. Just lots of little things that it kind of stacked up quickly because he was not talking a lot, and then he just was.
That's interesting. Does he go to like any sort of like I don't know, like educational preschool type place to learn all that stuff, or where does that come from?
Yes, he's in daycare, and he learned, I assume, a lot of it from that. But we
Yeah,
also just we have toys that sing it to him and
sure.
whatnot, and PBS is very educational, so he picks it up from everywhere.
Wow, that's so interesting. When do you, I mean, like when is it like video game time? I mean, obviously not two, but
Whenever
I don't know. I feel like I was like 3 or 4 when I first when I first was handed a controller.
whenever I have faith that he can actually like play it and isn't just gonna throw it down on the ground and break
Right.
it,
Yeah.
then that's when he gets his chance.
Okay. Well, that is gonna be
Um,
interesting. It's so fascinating for me to like think about what because the obviously the landscape of video games is so different than it was like when we were growing up. And like I like there was a very clear market toward pretty young kids, I feel. Like there was like all
yeah.
those Disney games and stuff, for instance. Like I played a lot of those when I was, for just very young and first starting out. I think I remember I would go over to my dad's and he had a PlayStation like for him. Like that he played. He had stuff like Gran Turismo and Madden and whatnot. But he bought A Bug's Life for the PlayStation 1. And I remember like that was the first one that I remember going over there and like being excited to actually try to like make progress.
Yeah, the earliest game that I remember playing, I may have been three, but I think I was four, and I played Wario World on the Game
Oh,
Boy.
on the GameCube. Yeah.
Game Boy.
We did an episode on that, did we not?
No, 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 the OG, the Game Boy
Oh,
Wario World.
so were you playing as Wario?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I don't think I've ever actually played that. I played because like there's some really old Mario games from like the beginning of the Game Boy, like Super Mario Land, and then I think they did a Land 2, which I don't think I've even played that one, but I have played Super Mario Land, which was a like Game Boy launch, Tetris, and Super Mario Land. I think those were like the games that existed, and it looks like
Oh
it. Like
wow.
it looks like if you look up some footage of Super Mario Land, like it literally looks like it could run on a calculator. But it's like I know that the Game Boy is just kind of an interesting console anyway because it was around for so long, and they were able to like it's weird how much they were able to progress the games on that console. For by the end, you could run Pokemon Gold on a you technically could run that in an original Game Boy, which is kind of crazy to think about. So I'm guessing that this one was at least a little bit more advanced than Super Mario Land 1.
Maybe, but it was still black and white. This was
Yeah.
before the Game Boy Color.
Yeah.
So I
Was
guess
it
rather than
like
black and
a
white, it was more like green.
Yeah, I was gonna ask because so my Game Boy that I had, and I told this story a little bit at the top of my top 25 because my number 25 was Pokemon Red and Blue, but
Right.
it was a black and white Game Boy, but it wasn't the green one. Because like the original model was like that big one with like the green screen, and it took like four double A's. It was like a monster, and then but the screen itself was pretty small. And then they made like a much smaller version. Mine was blue, and then it had a black and white screen. It didn't have any of the green. It was called a Game Boy Pocket, and actually it took like two triple A's, and it ran on that for like a long time. And then I graduated to a Game Boy Color. It was after I had gold because gold could run on either one. And a lot of Game Boy Color games were actually exclusive to the color, but not Pokemon Gold. And so that was like the first because my first Game Boy game was just called Casino, which was because it was like my great grandmother's in the game. Like she just like randomly gave me the Game Boy, which was an amazing gift in hindsight. But at the time, all I had was Casino, and obviously I didn't give a crap about that when I was 4 or whatever. But then, yeah, when I found out that it could run like a Pokemon game, I was like, oh, this thing is actually kind of interesting. And then I did get like some other games for it. I remember having a Bug's Life on the Game Boy, the Game Boy Black and White as well. And I think I had like a Star Wars game. It was like Return of the Jedi or something. And there were probably some other things here and there, but yeah, those are old Game Boy days. Those are very
Yeah.
different than what obviously Onyx will be growing up with.
Oh, yeah. I actually had a much more positive initial association with the Game Boy than you did. I had the big honking yellow Game Boy.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Um, And my two games that I had on it before, my memory starts at about the time that I got Pokemon Red. And
Yeah.
so in my memory, I just always had Wario and Bionic Commando.
Oh,
You
okay.
ever played
So
Bionic Commando?
I haven't, but I think it's like a pretty like I think even before I think it might have been like an old arcade game or something before.
It's honestly pretty good. You have a hook that
Okay.
acts as a jump that transports you around. You have a gun. Very, what's that game that was so popular? That Konami game, Contra. Very
Yeah,
Contra
okay.
ripoff.
Interesting.
But little 3 and 4 year old me was playing that, and then I got Pokemon Red and Blue,
I mean, that'll
which
do it.
spoiler, it looks
Oh,
like did not make the list for me,
yeah, yeah. I mean,
which is surprising.
it's tough. Well, one thing that is kind of interesting about your list too, is that you all have almost no overlap where you have like more than one game in a series on here. Which
Yeah.
was not the case with mine. I didn't have as much as I expected. Like I think my top 12, there was only there was like two Final Fantasy games in my top 12, but other than that, they were all, they all were one game per series. But as I got kind of lower, there were some duplicates. But yeah, yours is a lot more varied, and I guess this is a good time to just start going into it now. Do you want to lay down what number 25
Yeah.
is here?
All right, so number 25, top of the list, and this is one that relies largely on nostalgia because you probably won't catch me playing this game anytime in the near future. Dance Dance Revolution.
Okay, now I love this because first of all, just this is a trend that you're going to notice on this list is that which I think I might have already mentioned is that I have not played a surprising percentage of the games on Sean's list. And actually, believe it or not, I've never played Dance Revolution. The
You've
closest I've
never played
come,
DDR.
no, the closest I've come is back in the PlayStation 1 days. I did have what I think was I don't know if it was officially a DDR knockoff, but it was the same idea where it was like the arrows and it was a Jungle Book game. It was called Jungle Book Rhythm and
Oh,
Groove. And Jungle Book's got some good music in there, so it kind of makes sense. But and I think you actually could if you had a mat, I think it would work. But I didn't
wow.
obviously, so I just used the buttons on the PlayStation controller. But
Was that
that's
fun?
well, I don't know. It's been so long since I played it that it's hard to say. Like I remember like it was one of the few games that I beat back in the day, but that's not really that impressive because there's you basically just played there. They did have some original songs. They did pad it out a little bit beyond what was just in the movie, but it took all the music from the
Hmm.
movie and then there were like some originals. And there was like some cool effects where like there were like power-ups and things like that from what I remember. You could get like a firewall type thing where you could take a break for a second and it just like automatically popped all of the I don't know. I think of them as like kind of balloon looking things, but like the
Yeah.
inputs as they run down, like very Guitar Hero style. And then I remember that, and I think there were like kind of how in Guitar Hero 3, it's like you had to have the guitar battles.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
they had that kind of thing. Like there were like bosses where you face off against
Wow.
the monkey, whoever like King Louie, I think is his name, the orangutan or whatever he is, and then like obviously the lion at the end or tiger, whatever he is. You had to do a little battle with him, but yeah, it was that was interesting. That would have made for a good one off, but I don't know if that music would have been able to survive the copyright or whatever. But
We
yeah, that
probably would have had to, man, I would love to have a straight up DDR mat again and actually, because there's a game called Step Mania,
okay.
which you could do it on a pad, but I've only ever played it on PC and I didn't have a pad that could hook up to PC to my knowledge. Actually, they probably could have. It was just a USB,
Yeah.
but I only knew it to be a PS2 pad, so I never tried it. And that kind of gave me the itch for like harder content. But DDR, the activity, the going to the mall and flexing in front of your
Yeah.
friends when
See,
you're on
that's
a
what I was gonna
school
ask
trip.
if you like primarily played it like because when I think of it, like it's like the mall, right, where you would go and they had like the big machines, right? I think of that more so than like I know that there were home versions as well, but like it seems like those would pale in comparison to the mall where they had like the big kind of setup where they kind of had didn't they even have like a rail where if you were like really flying,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Oh my God. And I relied strongly on that rail. There would be
Okay.
times where my feet were not on the ground when I would just be holding myself up on the rail.
Yeah. That's so
Um,
crazy. So you were pretty good.
I was pretty good. I could play
Yeah.
on heavy, but I
Okay.
could not play like the hardest songs. You know, you see some of these like South Koreans, the way they play DDR. I couldn't do any of
Yeah.
that. Have you ever seen any like DDR choreography?
Not really. I've seen like clips of people that are like really good, but yeah, you mean like when you say the choreography, you mean like just like the making of or
I've seen clips where specifically I've only seen Koreans do this. They will not only be playing the game perfectly, but they will be actually dancing with each other. Like it'll
Oh,
be, I've only seen it in pairs
okay.
where they're like swapping out who is dancing on what pad and they're doing
Oh,
like on their hands and whatnot. This is all like decade old video
yeah.
kind of stuff that I'm talking about now, but like it's so impressive that it kind of made me not want to play anymore.
Oh, really?
Because it's almost like, well, I'm gonna play when I want to have fun with the game, but I used to play because I thought I was, you know, like getting good, and now seeing what being good looks like, I know I
Right.
will never really be that.
Right, right. And then the versions that you played at home, like how did that compare? Like to me, like I always just figured like the little mat would get like stuck to your feet or something. I don't know. Like it just didn't
It
seem like the
does.
okay, yeah. It just didn't seem like it would be quite the same as on
It
the home.
is not the same at all. It's fun. It's a lot of fun, but
Yeah.
it's way more tiring because you can't put your weight on that bar.
Yeah. Right, right. That makes sense. Would you have to like wear like your socks or something so like your feet wouldn't stick to the
No, I just got used to my feet sticking to it, and I
Okay.
just the home version just wasn't as hard.
Okay.
I can't remember which one I had, but what I do remember is that it had the Good Charlotte song "I Just Want to Live."
Okay. I was gonna
So
ask
whichever
the
DDR
go-to
that
song.
was.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like this kind of was the music rhythm genre before Guitar Hero, right? I mean, there were like other
Yes.
little things like I think maybe either frequency or amplitude maybe existed also before Guitar Hero, but like this was like kind of what that genre was before Guitar Hero took off. And then like
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting because now like I don't know, like do they even still have DDR stuff like at malls and arcades and stuff? Or whatever.
It's been a
Arcades.
long time since I've seen a DDR machine.
Yeah.
It's
It's
been a
that's
long
kind of it's
time.
kind of a shame.
It is. It really is. Because like, what's funny is you'll see Guitar Hero in arcades.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah, and I'm like, there's room for more than one rhythm game in this arcade.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of interesting 'cause, like I don't really obviously I don't the only I guess like the most recent arcade that I was in was Reagan's brother's it was his birthday a couple years ago. I think it was the first year that I knew Reagan. So this is probably 2021. And they went to, it's always like a hybrid, right? It's never just an arcade. It's got something else attached to it. So like this one was
Yeah.
like a bowling alley, and they had like some pinball machines in there and they had laser tag and all that. And then they had like a fairly sizable arcade. And they didn't have any DDR, but they actually did have a version of your number 24, if you want to go into what that is.
Really? That is exciting.
They did.
Okay, number 24, Beat Saber.
Yeah, so I sadly I didn't actually play that either. And I've never
Oh
played Beat
man.
Saber, but I did see it going and I was like, "Oh, that's cool. That's that VR game that everybody talks about." So, it's kind of interesting because there's kind of some through lines here from DDR to Beat Saber, I feel. From the outside looking in.
Yes, they are very, a rhythm game is a rhythm game, in
Yeah,
my opinion. As a lover of them, I can say they are definitely birds of a feather, the whole genre.
right.
Um, but Beat Saber is a special experience, especially if you're into VR, because the whole body involvement, because like it does make you, DDR involves your whole lower body,
Yeah,
but you're really just trying to take your upper body out of the picture and get yourself out of the way. With
sure.
Beat Saber, you got to move, you got to crouch, you got to be wholly into it, and so it's almost like exercise sometimes.
Sure.
If you're playing on hard, and it's just whoops, I had one of my AirPods fall out.
Oh,
And it's just like Hell, I might get on some Beat Saber later tonight.
Oh, really?
If
Yeah,
I
just
if I have the opportunity, because it's always a good time. I
yeah.
I never play more than like 3 songs because I get tired out because I'm an old man.
I wondered about that.
But
Yeah, it does look like I've seen people play. It does seem like a lot of work. But it does seem like very cool. It's a very cool idea. I feel like this is, you're a lot more into VR obviously than I am. I mean, like you straight up when what was it? It was the announcement that Resident Evil 4 VR was coming. You're like, all right, that's all I need to know. You like bought a PS5, bought a
I
PSVR 2.
Yep. Yeah, or it may not have even been Resident Evil 4. It may have been
Yeah, it could have been
Village.
Village. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But that was like where I was. That was kind of an eye opener for me. I was like, "Whoa, Sean is like really into VR." And which is cool. I'm like, I have a lot of interest in VR, but I haven't actually like pulled the trigger. But I feel like when people talk about VR, Beat Saber it seems like it always kind of gets brought up almost immediately. It's kind of like, well, if you have VR, you got to play Beat Saber.
Yeah. And that's, I think, very reasonable. I don't think it's overhyped at all.
Really?
Because like just getting into it, just feeling yourself slicing through those blocks when you're
Yeah.
really in time, especially if you get in a groove, once you get to like expert, it just feels right.
Yeah.
Um, the way whoever does the blocks is very good at their job, in my opinion. I know a lot of people use custom mods to really get their own experience out of it. And, that's cool, whatever. But I think the song packs they put out are good. I think the blocks they change, you can kind of it feels like different people do the different song packs
Hmm.
because you can get a little bit into one and kind of get a feel for like, oh, okay, so they like to do a lot of crossing, like the Linkin
Okay.
Park one. They really are like hand twisters, is how I think of it. Um, I don't know, it's just a great experience overall.
Yeah, that's cool. And like they, I think one of the things that people really liked about Rock Band, and I'm included in that, like kind of after the fact. I didn't really get into Rock Band until much later, but was like the fact that you could like download songs and like they would put out new songs and new song packs. So is that something that they still put out even to this day for Beat Saber?
They still put out songs to this day for Beat
Wow.
Saber. They just put out one. Who did they put out the other day? They put out a song pack in the time since I last watched it. I mean, since I last played. Or when I got back on, they had put one on there. Britney
Nice.
Spears. They
Oh,
put a Britney
okay.
Spears song pack out.
Wow. Okay. So it's is it kind of like the Rock Band setup then where it's like you buy the game, you get like a certain amount of songs, and then like you can just buy the other packs or whatever.
Yep. And they actually, now that you mention it, they still put out free songs too.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Yes. And the free songs are hard. It's
Really?
not something that you're just going to knock out. They get harder every single time they put out a new free set.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. It's cool that it's like a sort of like a living game where they keep uploading because Beat Saber has been around for gosh, it
Like a
seems like
decade now,
yeah,
maybe.
yeah. It's like kind of it's kind of interesting that it's sort of held up as one of the premier um VR titles because it's just like it's been around so long. So it's kind of interesting that it's had that staying power, I feel, more than maybe any other VR game, really, like in terms of
I think so.
yeah, in terms of games that I hear about for the medium. So yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'll definitely have to check that out. I wish I had whenever I saw it at the place. But I guess the reason I didn't is because I wasn't, you put the VR thing on, and I guess there were probably screens where Reagan could have watched me or whatever. But we were like doing a bunch of other stuff with like her family and stuff, so I didn't want to. I don't know. It felt like a more isolating, I guess, experience than probably what I was looking for at the time.
It
But
is. That's one of the things about VR. So with the MetaQuest 2, they kind of have ways around this, the different headsets. I have the MetaQuest 2 and the PSVR 2.
yeah,
And they each have a workaround for the isolation issue of casting to the TV. Um, I'm not sure how that would work in an arcade,
yeah, honestly.
but
Even really because like I said, it's been like 3 years, so I can't even probably more than 3 years at this point. So I can't even really remember what it was. But I know for a fact they did have a Beat Saber thing in there. So maybe that's the thing for like for arcade. I don't know if that was like a unique thing that they had there or if it's like more common or whatever. But because like I said, I don't go to them very often. But that seems like a cool place to try it at least. Because then for me, not having a headset at home.
yeah,
All right, well, you ready to move on to number 23?
Yes, and this one is very different from the first two. You may think I'm going to be all rhythm games here from the first two, but number 23 is Halo 3.
Okay, now this is a game that obviously I have a lot more of a history with, but it's kind of interesting because for me, and you probably remember this, I still to this day have never owned an Xbox 360. And
Right.
so I totally missed out, and I did have an original Xbox, but it was like after the fact. I bought my original Xbox. It was like at a GameStop where they were, I don't know that they were like on clearance, but they were trying to get rid of them basically, and I bought my Xbox for like $50. And it's reeked of cigarettes, by the way. But seriously wore off. But I didn't, I still to this day really haven't played a ton on my original Xbox. Like the main reason I got it, to be honest, was for Knights of the Old Republic, and honestly, that alone, that was worth it. But like, yeah, I didn't really get into Halo until even like when we were doing the channel stuff, when we were still in college. I had never played Halo at that point. It was really like right after we graduated where my brother and I like ran through them all, and I immediately just thought that series was fantastic. But for you, I'm guessing that you probably played it a lot closer to when it was actually coming out.
Yes, I sure did. I played it. So I played a little bit of Halo 2 a while after it came out. And then Halo 3 came out, and I was like, okay, I played Halo 2 on the Xbox. I've got this 360.
Mhm.
Um, I can't remember exactly. See, my memory for my gaming history is not as good as yours. I wish I could just be the historian of my life that you are for yours. Um, because I don't remember like the relation of when I got my 360 to when I
Right.
knew Halo 3 was coming out, but I
Sure.
kind of feel like my instinct tells me there was some knowledge of Halo 3's upcoming existence when I got the 360.
Well, I'm sure that there was because, well, it's interesting that we're talking about this time period because I've actually been going back. I don't know if you heard about this, but Game Informer is dead now, which is,
Right.
that I was a big fan of them. And like I read them some from, it was my 11th birthday in 2005 when my grandfather bought me a subscription. And that was when I really got into reading that stuff. And I have a collection that is mostly focused on issues with like lists in them. And there's like mostly like their end of the year lists and stuff like that. But I do have I've actually been reading through some of the old ones, and I was doing this before they announced that they were closed. But I had kind of gotten back into them because they had like renewed their subscription. It was kind of like a last gasp where they were trying to get people to get the subscriptions, which I was before they went under. But I was been reading some old ones, and it's really fun to go back and like and do that. It's just like as a historian, it's really interesting to see what sort of things they're talking about and like what's exciting to them and like what never comes out. Like not that long ago,
Yeah.
I read like their cover story was StarCraft Ghosts, which never truly.
Oh my God. What year was that?
I think it was like '03.
Okay, yeah.
But which
Oh
I think
man.
it had kind of persisted as vaporware for like a lot longer than that. Because the one that I was reading most recently was their issue after E3 2005. So this is the E3 where the 360 is on the way. It's going to be released later that year. And the PlayStation 3 was also at E3. They're supposed to like they don't know the price thing yet.
Yeah.
And it's like they're saying that it's going to come out spring 2006. And this is like the original showing of the PlayStation 3 where if you remember like they had like the boomerang controller instead of like the regular DualShock. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh no, I don't know what you're
Oh
talking
yeah,
about
you gotta look
actually.
that up sometime. It's like this controller and like it's just like this huge it's basically just this huge boomerang. It's super crazy looking. It honestly looks kind of cool. Like I feel like if they ever released that controller now as like a nostalgia piece, people would be into it. But at the time it was like universally panned. And so they went back to the original design before the console came.
Uh.
But it was like they said it was a concept or whatever. But a that was like they were supposed to come out spring 2006. So even then they knew that the 360 was going to come out first. But then I don't think the PS3 even ended up hitting spring 2006. I think it was like after that. And what was really interesting at this E3 was they were talking about the Wii, but it wasn't called the Wii yet. It was the Nintendo Revolution. That's what they were calling it.
Oh,
And they didn't know about the motion control yet. I'm sure Nintendo did, but like
wow.
in terms of what they were communicating to like the press, like they didn't even know about the motion control yet. So that was really like interesting. Like what they were pushing at the time was like you're gonna be able to basically the concept of the eShop where you were going to be able to go on and like buy old games or whatever.
Oh
So
wow.
so it was kind of
That
being
was their
pitched.
selling point at the
Yeah, it was
first
kind of being
E3 for the
pitched as
Wii?
like yeah, it was kind of being pitched as like the ultimate Nintendo console where you can like play all the big games from Nintendo history, and it was gonna actually have DVDs instead of those little mini discs that the GameCube had. And so like that was sort of like the big thing stuff that they were pushing there for this is summer 2005, so or whatever. But reason I'm bringing this up is because they absolutely knew Halo 3 was coming even then. So I'm sure that you were that was like coming through in some way to you. Where like, and plus, I mean, Halo 2 doesn't exactly. I mean, a Halo 3 is coming whenever Halo 2 ends. It's like one of the biggest
The thing
cliffhangers ever. So,
is, I did not beat Halo 2.
oh, okay,
So I knew that Halo 3 was coming because Halo is hype, and obviously there's going to be a Halo 3. I did not know through the story Halo 3 was coming. It
okay,
was just intuition.
yeah, yeah, okay. Well, that's pretty cool. And realistically. So you must have been a fairly early adopter of the 360 because it came out, I think, November '05, and then I don't know when in 2007 Halo 3 came out, but it was in '07 somewhere. So within those couple years is whenever you must have somewhere in there.
I'm guessing I bet that I got mine for Christmas of '06.
That sounds about right. It's probably a lot of people probably got it around that time. So whenever you got into Halo 3 then, and yeah, we know whenever you were playing Halo 2, was it the campaign that you were playing the most, or was it like the
It
multiplayer?
was the online.
Okay, wow.
I beat the Halo 3 campaign with my friend Brian, who I don't know if I've ever mentioned Brian to you, but he's gonna come up for multiple I
Oh,
beat this
interesting.
game stories.
Okay.
Because there were so many games that I would go over to Brian's house and beat. Even though they were my games, I would for some reason beat them at his house. Um, and Halo 3 we beat together, but I spent a lot of time on the online, and I'm not really good at online games anymore, but back in the day, I was pretty fucking good at Halo 3 for like a
Oh yeah.
14-year-old or whatever I was.
Nice.
I played the rank a little bit, and I think this is actually garbage, but I felt good about it at the time. I got to like rank 13. I think the highest rank is like 50 or
Oh,
something.
yeah.
But I did my little bit of ranked playing, got to rank 13, and I was like, okay, I think I'm doing pretty well. Most of my games, I would go like I would say my average kill to death ratio in team death matches in normal play was like 20 and 5.
Wow. Okay.
So
Yeah.
I was kind of fucking slaying. But the thing is, what made me stop playing Halo 3 online was that I would go into so much rage over my
Mm,
teammates not doing as well as me.
sure.
And now that's so foreign to me because I care so little about my like outcome in a video game. But
Right. Right.
back then I really cared about winning. And I there was a moment where I said something along the lines out loud. I said this to my TV slash to my teammates along the lines of, I hope you die so I can piss on your grave. But I decided, maybe this is not for me. This is causing a lot of anger. And little 12, 13-year-old, whatever me, can't handle all this. So
Yeah.
I moved on from Halo 3 Online
Well,
to
two.
to a game that is not on this top list, but that caused me much, much more distress. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2.
Oh, yeah, because that would have been, yeah, it would have been around the same time. So I think actually Modern Warfare 1 and Halo 3 came out the same year. So amazing year for FPS. But like yeah, then Modern Warfare 2 obviously would have come out pretty quickly after that. It might have been like '09 by the time Modern Warfare 2 came out.
That was my transition from Halo, and I came right back because Modern
Real
Warfare 2 pissed me off much more, and
yeah.
my friends were way more into it.
Yeah, I feel like that is the pipeline that a lot of people followed that were really into FPS because it was like, if you were like a really old school FPS player, then I guess you were probably playing like Doom and stuff on the PC or maybe like GoldenEye, right, on the N64.
Or
But
Medal
then,
of Honor.
but yeah, Medal of Honor maybe on the PS1. But then Xbox obviously launched with Halo 1, and that was just such a huge deal to a lot of people. And then I think from there, the through line was kind of Halo 1, Halo 2, Halo 3, Modern Warfare, you know? For a lot
Yeah.
of people, like for the masses, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but which is
Which
interesting. Well, I was just gonna say, just because, like, for me, obviously, I until I played Halo, I really wasn't a big FPS guy. I don't really know. I'm trying, other than, I played obviously the Fallouts, which I played in first person, but like I'm trying to think of like in terms of traditional FPS before playing Halo. And this is like 2016, 2017, whatever, like around the time that we graduated, where I was dipping into these. And so whenever I played, and we played them in chronological order, so we actually started with Reach, which is still my favorite, but 3 is a close second for me. But like the I was just really taken aback by just like the scale of it all, which I still kind of feel like other FPS games that I've tried, like none of them really quite match like that sense of scale I feel in the level design. And like when we were playing Halo 3, obviously we kind of had the resurgence of Halo 3 on our own channel whenever we were
Yeah.
started back up in 2022, and that was a lot of fun. But like that again, like just kind of made me sort of appreciate the level design. Like they were packing a lot of cool stuff in there, and like with a lot of variety in the missions and that sense of scale. But then also there was like just a lot of like cool moments in there for me having gone through the story chronologically. Like there's like a lot of payoffs I think in Halo 3, like where the elites and the humans are like trading gear, getting ready for like a big fight, and then like you have the brief alliance with the Flood until that goes south, and then the Arbiter kills the Prophet, and that's like a big moment. And just like the ability to play all this, like you said, in split screen co-op, that was just such a that kind of like that was a critical feature, I think, for like how
Oh yeah.
for why that game was so awesome.
Yes. Yeah, the split screen back in the day, I don't think we're ever going to have a split screen resurgence
Yeah.
like we experienced in the late 2000s. I don't think gaming is ever going to reach that again, the
Yeah.
way that you could just play Halo with your friends on the couch and
Yeah.
have
It's
a
it's
good
a it's
time.
a shame. I mean, even the last two Halo games have not had it, which seems like a cardinal sin. But and I know there has been like outrage about it, but at the end, and maybe that has contributed to why they haven't done as well as as obviously the OGs. But yeah, I mean, it's just it's not considered like a priority feature for developers, I feel, today. And I understand that it probably is like kind of a pain to get working, because they're trying to push it, graphics and performance and all this stuff, and then you start adding in another player and splitting the screen in half. I get that it is kind of like probably a pain logistically to create, but man, it sure led to a lot of fun memories for people that really experienced it in its heyday, or even after its heyday, like me, just going back and playing it, and like it was still like really held up.
Yeah, gaming these days. Oh God, this is kind of a boomer tangent to go on, but it's a much more isolating experience than it
Yeah,
used to be. Because
yeah, I
like
think it's fair to
you
say.
are, it's at the same time more connecting because online is so much more common. Like when
Right.
I was playing Halo 3, that was like the first online game I really got into.
Yeah, I was
But
still
at the
pretty
same
early.
time, you just can't invite your friends over and play on the couch the same way that you could when we were little kids.
Yeah, I feel
It's
like
just not the same thing. Like Taryn and I try to play games together even, and it's a lot more work to find a game that we can play together than it used to be.
yeah, I know it's a shame. I like and the games that you can play, they're not like games like Halo. You know what I mean? They're usually like kind of more indie projects or smaller scale games, or games where it's not like a high action game, right? Where it's like a good example is my wife and I, we recently played through this game called Spiritfarer. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
I've heard
But
of it through you.
Oh, okay. But yeah, because it was, and it's also on her list. So if you listen to that episode ever gets posted, then we talk about it there. But like it is a sort of like a management sim type thing, like sort of like Animal Crossing in a way, but it's more directed in the sense that there's like a story, and it has like some central narrative themes and hooks and characters and stuff that you deal with. But that is a game that you can play completely co-op, and we did, and we had a lot of fun doing that. But yeah, we really haven't. Most of the experiences that we've had were not like that. They were like maybe games like a Mass Effect, or Heavy Rain or something, where she could like make choices but didn't necessarily have to like participate. Uh,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of more in line with what we do these days, than having a great co-op game like that. There have been some other ones, like a lot of the Mario games that are still coming out. You can still do that. We played 3D World, which I think was originally a Wii U game, but it was on the Switch, and it was like a sort of like a 3D style Mario game, but it was not like a Super Mario 64 style where it's like the open like that. It was like it was more in the line in the line of like what you'd expect from a 2D, where it's like you go through levels, linearly basically. And that was a lot of fun. And we played through that whole thing. That was a few years ago. So there's still like things like that are around, but yeah, it's obviously nowhere near as common or on the sense of the games that you would expect from the old days that you can do these days, sadly.
Yeah. Speaking of
Um,
the games from the old days,
yeah, this is yeah, you got to tell us about this one because this is a fascinating choice.
a deep cut number 22, Gunz the Duel.
Okay, now I think I remember we've talked about this before a little bit just because I knew that it was on your list and it was just like what is this thing, and I do pretty much need you to explain it again because I've kind of forgotten, but I did actually, but while I was getting ready for the podcast I actually Googled this one because I was just like what is this thing,
Mhm.
and because like, I really knew absolutely nothing about it, so my understanding is this was like some sort of like PC exclusive sort of multiplayer
Yes.
shooter. But tell us about what this is and how
All
you
right.
got onto Guns the Duel.
Oh God. I honestly I have no idea how I heard of the game.
Okay.
I can't tell you my origin story of playing guns, but back in the day, I used to mainly play PC. This was when I was about in the sixth grade, I would say.
Okay.
And I was mainly a PC player. I was mainly playing, well, a game that I won't spoil because it's on this list actually.
Okay.
But that in a game called Ragnarok Online, and those transitioned, even though they are nothing like this, to Guns the Duel. It's a third-person shooter game,
Third person. Okay.
where you are entirely online. There was very little player versus environment. It was mostly player versus player. It relied on the fact that the game was broken and you could use animation canceling to do crazy
Oh
shit.
boy. Okay.
Basically, you could use a sword, you could use guns, you could switch between the two. So, a brother-in-law of mine saw the game and he described it as funky dance party where people shoot each other because the way your movement works, you can dash.
Okay.
I will describe a quick combo for you that I used often. This is known as half step.
Okay.
What you would do, you would jump into the air, you would dash, you would be holding your sword when you jumped. You would jump up, you would dash with your sword in your hand, you would switch to your gun, you would fire, you would switch back to your sword, then you would dash backwards. And all of this would happen in about the span of 1 second, and it would be
Yeah.
about 11 buttons pressed.
Oh.
So that's what kind of game this was. It was
Yeah.
basically Arthritis the game. Because the way that you can make your character move is so magical. No game ever, and I feel confident in saying this, no game ever has had movement like Guns the Duel has. The way you can just make your character bounce off the walls, fly around. You're not supposed to. This is all, well, you're
Right.
supposed to be able to bounce off the walls and wall run, but you're not supposed to be able to just shoot while you're doing everything. And just the adrenaline, just the ADHD, you're mashing so many buttons, it's crazy all the time. You're always aiming, you're always moving around the map. And that just becomes second nature to you to where you're doing these 12 button combos and it feels like nothing. That's just what you're doing all the time. And I could play for hours and hours. Some of my best friendships as a sixth grader online were formed through Guns the Duel. I remember, oh God, this is kind of a weird story. I had a very awkward interaction where I was just trying to play the game and I was in a clan and a clan member's girlfriend was hitting on me in the video game. And I was like, I'm just trying to shoot you. I'm a sixth grader.
Right. Oh my gosh, that does sound pretty wild. I was when I was looking into this, it's actually in some ways sounds like it was a little bit ahead of its time. It was free to play, right? But
Yes.
it had microtransactions, and this is like the
Yes.
mid 2000s, right? When this came out, like you said, like you're in sixth grade, so it kind of feels like this is kind of the direction that gaming ultimately ended up going. So it
Yes.
kind of does seem like it was a little bit ahead of its time.
It really was. And in Korea, it was so popular that it was televised.
Really, Guns
Yes.
Duel with a Z.
Yes. Because they were so good at it. The style that I'm describing, where you would press 12 buttons at a time, they called it K style. Because the
Oh,
Americans, we just had to have it shift into us to how to play. But if you ever actually got in a duel with a Korean, you were dead. You were dead. It was over.
yeah. Yeah, I believe it. And they still kind of have that reputation today with like other games like StarCraft and stuff. But
Oh, yeah.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that up because it was I was looking into this. It was a Korean developer that created the game. They were I don't know how to pronounce this. It's MAIET. They're all caps. So I don't know if that's might or if that stands for
Might.
something or whatever. But it sounds like they did do a sequel. I don't know if that ever even came
It
out.
flopped.
Oh,
It
okay, yeah,
flopped so hard, and I hate that. I hate that the Gunz sequel flopped.
yeah. And
But
then
they
I
took
think that was
out.
just kind of it. Like they were done after that, and like that those are the only games that developer ever made.
Yes, because what they did. So the first Guns relied on the glitches. The
Right.
glitches were what made it good. And they made it not glitchy in the second
Oh,
one. It was
what a
just a
mistake.
very smooth third person shoot. And it was a great game. Like on the design front, they did a great job. But they took out what made it special, which was that movement, which was that bugginess.
Yeah.
And they put in new abilities, they put it in classes. They worked so hard to replicate the experience, but like how they wanted it done, and it just didn't work. It didn't
No.
work at all. There are still, I could go on right now and find a private Guns the Duel server and
Really?
play some good old Guns the Duel.
Oh,
Yes,
that's
and I
awesome.
would get slaughtered because I actually did this a few years ago. I found a private Guns the Duel server, and I sucked. I was getting my shit rocked. There's this technique called double butterfly.
Okay.
And when I originally played Guns, if you did the double butterfly, you were like the hottest shit on the server.
Hmm.
But now everyone can do the double butterfly. And it's just like, if you can't double well, then you're gonna die. You're gonna eat shit and you're gonna die. And all your teammates are gonna hate you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's tough. It's tough
Yeah.
out there for a third person shooter player.
Yeah. It's so interesting because just already on this list, and I'm sure that there will be some other examples going forward, but like you just had so much of your early experiences where you were playing like these competitive games. And like, you were talking about how you were playing this in sixth grade. In sixth grade, not only did I mean, I'm sure we had a computer in the house. There's no universe where I would have even like dreamed of playing a game like Guns of Duel on my PC in sixth grade. Like
Oh
it
man,
was just like it was.
my computer.
It was like a totally different like what I was growing up with. Our PC. I don't remember when we got our first PC that wasn't just like a piece of garbage. Like old, really old style PC. With like Windows 98 on it. But I think it had to been pretty late because it wasn't even like we skipped XP. It was ours was Vista.
Oh.
So I don't know like what what time period that is exactly. I don't think it was a very wide period because I think Vista went down pretty fast. But that was what I had like when we finally upgraded our PC in our home. It was a Vista something or other.
When I got an XP, that was like a big deal for me. Okay,
Yeah.
I traded my Yu-Gi-Oh cards, my entire collection of Yu-Gi-Oh cards, for the computer that I used to run Guns the Duel. And the
Wow.
computer was so weak for the program that I couldn't load any of the character models. So when I played Guns the Duel, they were shadows of the characters
Oh
running
my
around. I could
God.
only see the black outlines of the
That's
characters.
crazy.
And I still loved the game so much that I saved up my allowance, my $5 a week allowance, and I bought a graphics card that was good enough to see
Wow.
the characters in Guns the
For
Duel.
Guns the Duel.
For
This
Guns the
is
Duel.
fascinating. I did not know there. I'm learning so much about Guns of Duel. I did not, and your history with it. I did not realize that it was this big a part of your life. It makes sense now that
It was
it's on
huge.
your list.
For years for me, it was huge. Until I was like a 10th grader, it was huge for me.
Wow. So this is like, is this where? What is? How does this relate with like the Halo timeline? Are you?
I
Is
was
this like
playing them at the same time.
okay? Okay. Wow. That is well. That is
Guns the Duel
fascinating.
came first, though.
What this one came first?
I believe so,
Yeah, I
if I
think
remember correctly.
that's probably correct. Okay. Well, certainly an interesting deep cut. I'm glad that it brought you a lot of joy in your youth.
Yes.
I'm glad that we were able to hear about it because I don't think too many people would pick Guns the Duel, except for maybe out of in South Korea, for
Yeah.
their top 25. But that is a fascinating pick.
It's a deep cut to make the list.
Yes.
So number 21, I'm going to be honest, I don't have as much to say about this one Disgaea 4.
Okay. See, now this is interesting. So obviously this is another one that I have not played. But this is one that I have a lot of interest in because recently in my life I have gotten into these sort of turn-based strategy RPGs. So the ones that I was playing, so I played a couple of Fire Emblems basically. So I played one on the 3DS and then actually early last year, I was on the you know how like on your Switch you can get the Switch Online or whatever and you can play old games. Well,
Yeah.
they have a version of that where you can play like Game Boy Advance games, and so they add the original, not the original, but for the U.S. the first Fire Emblem that we got in the U.S. post Melee.
Oh.
And I played through that whole thing and actually thought it was awesome. Like I really liked it a lot. And so like I'm like quickly realizing that this is this is a genre that I'm really interested in. But outside of like those couple of Fire Emblem games, and like you could kind of count Yu-Gi-Oh! Duels of the Roses on the PS2 because it wasn't like I don't know if you remember that game, but
Oh yeah.
you were basically on a chessboard, right? It's essentially a turn-based strategy RPG, but with cards instead of you know, whatever characters. So I am like really interested in this, but tell me about like your history with this guy and how you got into this and like what would you compare it to?
All right. So it is comparable to Fire Emblem, but it's like way easier and way over the top.
Okay.
And it's much more of an RPG where you're hoping to grind out. It's like imagine if Fire Emblem were not about the strategy,
Okay.
if it were not about the strategy of defeating your enemies, but were about grinding out enough to get strong enough, and then once you get far enough into the game, it becomes a puzzle game
Okay.
where, because in Disgaea, you can throw your partners around.
Oh.
And that comes into a lot of the puzzles
Mhm.
is throwing your partners across the board to get them to different elevations.
Right.
But I'm kind of skipping a lot because I'm trying to get into the parts of it that are not like Fire Emblem. And that's a big part of it. The class system is a lot more in depth. You have many, many classes to go through.
Okay.
What really does it for me for Disgaea 4 specifically is the story. I
Really?
really like I really like the main protagonist Valvatores.
Okay.
If I'm remembering his name right, I hope that's his name. I'm pretty sure his name is Valvatores.
Okay.
He's a vampire who does not wish to eat humans anymore. He has turned over a new leaf, and so he eats sardines, and he tries to get other people to be like him. Um, the stories of most of the Disgaea games to me, I've played one, two, four, five, six.
Wow. Okay. So this is a series you put some time into.
Yes, I have ashamedly not beaten most of them. I've beaten four and five.
Okay.
I've played most of one, two, and started six. Four is just so charming. I
Wow.
just love the characters. I just love the progression. I love the way you get stronger because this is a grindy game. It's a
Yeah.
very grindy game.
Yeah, can't you
You
get
find
level be like past 99 or is the max like 999 or something like that?
the max is 9,999, and then you
9,000.
reincarnate.
That's absurd.
You reincarnate and you start over at level one
Oh,
and you get up there again. Um,
that is crazy. So are you just
and
getting levels
that's
like really like all the time then if the cap is so high?
pretty much.
Okay.
You're pretty much always leveling. You kind of it's a weird. You try to get through as efficiently as possible to the like grindy stages.
Okay.
You eventually, after you get far enough into the story, you reach stages where it's like there will be special tiles. That's a large part of the strategy is the special tiles on every level.
Okay.
But it'll be like you'll get to some where there will be a special tile of like 300% experience. And so you try to just kill all the enemies in one move
Oh.
and get that 300% experience on the one map. And then you get to where you're strong enough to do that, and you do that over and over again.
Okay. Okay.
Frankly, knowing what I know about you and your taste in video games, Disgaea does not really seem like your kind of series.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've been thinking because like I'm really interested in this style. Like I really like the strategy of your Fire Emblem. I think probably the next thing that I should try is Final Fantasy Tactics, which I
Yes,
understand is probably I think I've heard you talk about it. It's pretty tough, right? Final Fantasy Tactics.
it's tough, but it's very, if you watch a guide on
Yeah,
how the character creation works and
right.
on how the stats work, you will beat Final Fantasy
Well,
Tactics.
that's the
I
thing.
have faith that you are
Yeah,
very capable of doing
yeah,
that.
that's the thing. Because Fire Emblem, the first Fire Emblem I played was on the 3DS, and it was at the beginning it was I was like, okay, yeah, this is no joke because like in Fire Emblem when characters die, like they're dead.
Right.
And so it's like, but they know that, and so like they're giving you like a lot of characters, so it's not like a disaster if people die on you. But like, and particularly on the 3DS one, when I was still kind of learning, because other than that, really the only game in this style that I can say that I played was that Yu-Gi-Oh one, which is also very hard. But like I remember like some pretty big, pretty important characters going down pretty early for me in that
Oh
3DS
man.
game, and I was like, oh man, this is no joke. But like I liked that. I reveled in that, like the kind of the what do you call it? It's like story, like not written out storytelling. It's like emergent stories, I guess. That
Oh
I would
yeah.
get from that. And then, but by the time I played Fire Emblem One, which I think is actually probably harder, obviously being that it's an older game, and you have like less opportunities to really grind up and stuff. Really no opportunities, frankly. Like that. I was more prepared for that one. I still would lose characters and stuff, but like I was more prepared for it. But like I remember like at the end in particular, like like they really throw a lot at you at the end, and it's all leading up to this giant dragon that like the villain has sort of brought into the world, and you have to take it out. And I remember like it came to like a point where it's like 'cause you kind of have an idea of how battles will turn out before you actually trigger them. Like whenever
Oh
you're
wow.
you're sending a guy up to like fight this guy, it's like it'll give you like the percentage that
Oh yeah, that they're gonna
percentage chance
hit.
to hit, and then like also how much damage they'll do, unless it's a crit.
Yes.
You don't know if it's gonna be a crit or whatever, but yeah. So like there were I was like facing down this dragon. I was like, okay, there is no way that I'm gonna get through this dragon without losing somebody. So it's just like like it's like me as the battle commander deciding, okay, which of my troops am I gonna like is gonna like that I had to sacrifice here, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That I just like really enjoyed a lot. So I think I'm particularly geared toward Fire Emblem, but obviously you know how much I love Final Fantasy. It's my number one series of all time. And so combining Fire Emblem with a tactics game with Final Fantasy Tactics, that has potential to be like just that could be like my number one. You know what I mean? If it like really
Oh yeah, you need to play Final Fantasy
yeah.
Tactics.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think you will greatly, greatly, whether you play Tactics or Tactics Advance.
Right.
Tactics Advance is easier. It's a
Sure.
lot easier.
Yeah.
But I think you will like both.
Yeah, yeah. So that's probably my next step when it comes to these. But if I like get through those and like there's like a lot of I just like really keep going down the path of these strategy RPGs, then eventually I guess I would obviously get to it as Disgaea. I'm curious. Whenever you were playing 4, was this like another one that you were playing on PC, or did you have this on one of the consoles?
I have 4 on Switch.
Oh, really? But is that where you were
Yes.
playing it? Like when you were first playing it?
Yep.
Oh,
I
wow.
played it on the
Okay.
Switch.
So yeah. So more recent than I thought.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Wow. Awesome. Because I remember when we were in college, I feel like I remember you talking about this guy, but I guess it wasn't this one yet.
No, that was probably Disgaea 2 was
Yeah.
my favorite before Disgaea 4 because I played the original Disgaea. I've played it so many times actually, and I've never beaten it. I've gotten to the very end multiple times, which is where I'm at now. I actually have an active playthrough of Disgaea now that
Wow.
is toward the end.
Yeah.
And then I just get to a point where it's like the grinding is less fun to me than the grinding in Disgaea 4, and I can't actually put into words why that is.
Okay.
There's just something about the charm of this guy 4 where when I'm with Torres, I'm like, I want this fucker to be strong.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting
Um,
because like it's because you mentioned how we sort of illustrated why something like Final Fantasy Tactics is probably more geared toward me. But knowing you, I can see how a Disgaea is more geared toward you because you love grinding in games.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, less now since I have less time,
Right.
but historically, that is my shit, is to just get into a mindless little groove where I'm not thinking about the game, and then eventually I reach my goal and I feel good about it.
Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, hey, there's worse times that you can have.
Oh yeah,
You know?
absolutely. Disgaea 4, great game.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it deserves its place on the list.
Yeah, I'm like I said, I'm interested in the series. I don't think it'll be my first stop when it comes to strategy RPGs, but I love that there are that this is a series that like exists and it still is going, right? So like this is
Yep.
basically I support strategy RPGs continuing to be a thing. So any series that's helping that happen, I support whole.
Yeah. Yeah, 7, to my knowledge, did okay. I don't know how it sold, honestly. I say that it did okay. I don't really know, but 7 exists,
Yeah,
so they're still
take it.
going.
We'll take it. All right. Well, speaking of grinding, I think that's a pretty big component, from what I understand, of your next game on the list. So
Oh boy, is it
continue.
number 20, RuneScape.
RuneScape. Okay, obviously another game that I have never played. And honestly, I, again, talking about my taste versus yours, like MMOs have never really been like this thing that I've gravitated to just because of like the time commitment and like all the grinding that you have to do. But for you, I imagine this was a formative game in your life, probably.
Yes, I started playing RuneScape when I was about in the 5th grade,
Okay.
and I played, so it coincided strongly with when I was in the Yu-Gi-Oh! League.
Oh,
And I would go up to Books a Million in Texarkana, and I would play Yu-Gi-Oh! With the people that were there, but they also, most of them played RuneScape, and most of them were adults. So
really?
I got the honor of being scammed by adults as a child.
Oh my God. That
Because
great.
they would tell me that things were great in the game. They would tell me to do this and that, and I would do it, and then I would get scammed by people who knew better.
Wow.
But so
Oh,
that's
that's
a
some life
pretty
lesson for
shitty
you.
average. I had multiple. The biggest life lesson I've ever learned from RuneScape is if it sounds too good to be true, it really is.
Wow. Hey,
There were multiple times where people would tell me, "Hey, if you give me this armor that you've got on, I will give you this." And me being a 10-year-old just would fucking believe them. And so I
yeah.
would give them all my armor thinking that they were about to. Because there's a thing in RuneScape called gold trimmed armor.
Okay.
And it's the same as the normal armor in terms of stats, but it looks cool.
Okay.
Um, and so they would tell me, I'm trimming armor. If you give me your armor, I'll give it back to you gold
Oh
trimmed.
God.
And obviously, they were just fucking stealing people's shit.
Yeah.
But so that's not the fun part of the game when you're getting scammed. The fun
Sure.
part is when you're leveling up your skills, you're getting new armor, you're doing quests. It's a great game. There are, I believe, oh, I'm not even going to try to guess. It's something like 27 skills or some shit that you can level up.
Sure.
Um, so I guess I am gonna guess. I said I wasn't gonna do it and then immediately did so. But
It's funny. You're very close. I just pulled it up on Wikipedia. It's 29. So very close.
29. Oh, 29 skills that you can level up. And it's if you have just time, if you have time and
Yeah.
not a lot of attention span to put into something, RuneScape is perfect because you
It's
can just go out to some trees and just chop trees and have a great time.
See, this is very interesting because one of the things I hear people talk about, and it's so true, is that when you're a kid, you are time rich, but you're money poor. And it flips when you become an adult, where
Yes.
you got money to burn, but you do not have the time to burn. And RuneScape is the perfect game, it sounds like, for a time rich, money poor kid because it was free, right?
Right. They did
Yeah.
have memberships, which I eventually ended up getting the paid membership.
Okay.
And I think that is one of the greatest value for what it is in all of bullshit microtransactions.
Sure.
They've increased the price now, so I'm not sure if it's as worth it because I want to say now it's like $12 a month, which is the same as a certain other membership that's coming up soon.
Oh, okay.
But I might be wrong about that. I haven't played RuneScape in a while, but the last time
Right.
I did, I had a lot of fun.
Really? Okay.
I follow the same pattern every time I make a new account. I keep losing my AirPods. Oh God, where did that land? Oh well, I'm gonna be looking while I talk here.
Okay.
Um, But uh wow, that really derailed me dropping
You're
dropping
saying
that
that
AirPod.
you follow the same. You're saying you follow the same trajectory every time you start up.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I will get my melee skills to about level 60. I will start to get what is called dragon armor, and
Okay.
then I will get bored with all the grinding that is required to get money, and I will quit. And then I will eventually pine for the time that I had a new account, and I will make a new account and do it all over again.
Yep. Yep. Well, again, like I said, there's worse times, worse ways to spend your time.
Oh, yeah.
I will say, like, just in terms of like a historical perspective, like obviously this is not a game that I played, but it was a game that I was aware of growing up around this time period. Like, you really couldn't really be like, if you were in school, you're in public school, you knew about RuneScape basically, and saw it running more than likely like in the computer labs and stuff. And like, I don't think there's, this is 2001 when this game first came out. So that's 3 years before World of Warcraft. Obviously there were MMOs before that, but I feel like probably the impact that RuneScape had on the industry through millions of people that have very similar probably experiences that you did, is kind of undeniable.
Oh, yeah. It's a force to be reckoned with. I don't think it nearly ever had the player count that WoW did, but
Sure.
like just the fact I personally knew more people that played RuneScape than that played WoW
Yeah.
growing up because it was free to play.
Yep. Yep. That's the key, I think.
Um, but it's an icon of
Yeah.
gaming.
Absolutely.
And there's a chance that I will play RuneScape some more in the
Yeah.
future.
In your life. Yeah. Don't count it out.
Yeah, it's very much on my radar. I am in the RuneScape subreddit,
There you go. Well, that's how you
which,
know.
quite frankly, I think is part of the reason I don't play anymore because all those people do is bitch.
Yeah.
They never have a good thing to say about RuneScape. The RuneScape subreddit is just a negative RuneScape space.
That sounds about right from what I know about Reddit.
Yeah, that's most Reddit spaces,
Yeah.
including the next entry on the list,
Oh, I believe it.
number 19, Diablo 3.
Okay. Now, okay, I gotta tell my funny story about Diablo 3.
Okay.
So I can't, this is obviously a game that I have not spent a lot of time with again, but I can't say I've never played Diablo 3. I actually picked it up at launch on the PlayStation 3, and tried to play it a little, knowing absolutely nothing about this series or how it worked. And the reason I did this, believe it or not, was so that I could put something in together for a review in the East Texan.
Nice.
And this was like whenever I think I was like just starting out, and so like I wasn't the editor yet, and so I was just page 6 doing the entertainment stuff, and I was like, you mostly was doing music stuff, and so I was like, well, I should mix in a video game. What's a new release that people are excited about? And at the time, it was Diablo 3. But yeah,
Wait, 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 wait. 2012 Diablo 3 was a new. Are you sure it wasn't like Reaper of Souls that you were covering?
um, so let's see. It was definitely 2013, not 2012. So yeah, that's possible, but I don't think. Let's see. I think maybe it was like okay, here we go. I pulled it up. So it was released on PC in 2012. PlayStation 3, it came out September 2013.
Oh,
Exactly
wow.
the time that I was starting as the entertainment editor of the East Texans. So
Wow.
that's probably why I did it. I was just like, what's a new release that I can do? Here it is, September 2013. I've got my first job. And yeah, I picked up Diablo 3. And I played it
Nice.
for a couple of hours probably. I got in way over my head. I went up against this boss that was just seemed completely insurmountable. And I stopped. So that is my experience with Diablo 3. I've never played it since.
What was it? The Skeleton King?
I have no idea. It was some demon looking thing. I don't know. I feel like it was Conjuring stuff. But again, this is over a decade ago, so I really have no idea. I don't even know what my class was. I think I was a pretty standard, like just like attack class. I don't think I was like summoning it.
Barbarian or
Yeah,
something?
or some crap like that.
Man, wow. I have spent so many. I can tell you, I have spent at least 600 hours on Diablo 3.
I believe it.
And that is because they have a class called the Witch Doctor
Okay.
that is a summoner class,
Mhm.
and you can get your pets and you can get your build in order, and then you can play the game with one hand and watch something on your other screen.
Yeah.
And I have spent hours and hours and hours and hours playing Diablo 3 while watching Netflix and just grinding it up and having a great time, not really paying that much attention to the game,
Yeah. Yeah.
which really is it an endorsement to say that a game is a great second screen game? No. Do I still think it belongs on the top list? Yes.
Sure.
So
Well,
that's kind of my place for Diablo 3.
I was curious, did you, because I know whenever I was growing up, like Diablo 2 was really big, like when I was a kid. Was that something that you dabbled with before? Or
I
was
did not like Diablo 2.
interesting? So 3 was
I
like really
played
the beginning.
multiple times and I did not like it.
Very interesting. Well, what was it? What was 3 doing differently that you feel like, was it just like it looked better and like
3 is easier.
okay,
It's an easy game. It's one of the easiest games I've ever played, to be honest.
okay, wow,
And you can still progress if you try at all. If you learn the systems and you know what you are looking for, all you've got to do is grind it out and you can get there. Now, there is a point. You do get to a point in the game where to progress further, you have to be good. But
okay,
you have to get very, very far to get to that point. So you can suck ass for like a long time and still just continuously make progress.
okay,
And the I it may not say a lot about me as a gamer, but I enjoy that. I
yeah.
enjoy when I can go into a game and make progress without actually using my brain.
Sure. Well, yeah, that does seem like the perfect kind of game for that then. What about, so obviously 4 has come out since then. Like how would you compare? I mean, obviously 3 is the one on the list and not 4, so that says something. But what, like how would you compare
Well,
the two?
4 is a wonderful game while you are playing the campaign.
Okay.
Now, my understanding is with the last season or two, they have made it much better for the end game. For me, I went back and I played through the campaign again, and I yet again had a great time playing through the campaign. And then I got to the end game and I just stopped
Yeah.
again. And that has been 3 different times my story with Diablo 4. Whereas with Diablo 3, when you beat the campaign, that's you've started the game.
Sure.
Um, and that is also something that's valuable to me is replay because you can just get on there. 3 has something called Greater Rifts,
Okay.
where it's just a random combination of map tiles and enemies. And you don't know what you're going to get. You don't know where you're going to go. You're just going to end up somewhere and you're going to kill some shit.
Yeah.
And that's fun. It's
Yep.
just so fun to see. I've built my gear up on my character. I don't know what enemies I'm going to fight. I don't know where I'm going to go. I just know that I'm fixing to click into this game and I'm going to have some fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Diablo 4 just doesn't quite have that same sense.
I see.
They don't have the greater rifts, which
Yeah.
a lot of people actually would say to me, TreeTrunkSean, you're crazy. That's what makes Diablo 4 better is that they don't just have random shit in it, that you actually have to like think about your progress and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I just disagree. It's just not my thing.
Okay, okay. Well, it's interesting because, like, it's again, it's sort of like what we were talking about with this guy. Like, it's a game that I feel like I have some respect for, and that I'm like I have interest in, just because just as a fan of games, and it's such a humongous series. But it's like just seems like such a time sink, and it's so like just seems so mindless. Like I just cannot imagine this being a game that I really ever get into, which is it's a shame because I do love like the stuff about it. Like I love the art style of it, and just like just kind of that aesthetic going that it has going for it. And
Yeah.
I could see myself maybe going through like a campaign or something, and it could be something that would be fun for us to go through together, like on the channel someday or something, because it is a co-op game, obviously. But yeah, it's hard to imagine that ended up being like a huge game for me.
Yeah, I don't think I I think you could have fun with one campaign, but I don't think it's going to ever be your cup of tea because it's just got that mindless aspect that is not really, in my experience, your thing.
Yeah, I think one thing that's kind of interesting where it's changed a little bit, because like back whenever we were doing all of our gaming together, it was before I was into trophies, and trophies has helped me like kind of with an end goal in mind. I get into stuff that you might not expect. Like here's a crazy example is I went back and played through like I got the platinum trophy in Battlefield Bad Company 2 on the PlayStation 3.
Oh, how random.
Right, super random. But the reason I did that is because they were closing the servers. But and right now I've actually been playing through Star Wars Battlefront 2 on the PS, the new version, the updated version, PS4 5 version. But from Dice. But like that has been fun because it's like I know exactly what my end goal is. It's getting all the trophies. I get all the trophies. I have my shiny thing at the end, and I move on. And so like with
Yeah.
that aspect in mind, I feel like I could do that with like a Diablo game, and then just like move on after I do whatever stuff it is. And I actually think that another good example where that might come into play is on your next entry if you want to move on to that one.
Yes, so moving on, number 18, Fallout 76.
Okay, so
Controversial.
yeah, well, first of all, yes, super controversial, which is interesting because it's not like, well, based on what people are probably gathering from what they've heard about your gaming taste, it does kind of make sense. But it's not like you came into Fallout 76 just because it was like the online Fallout game. You were a huge fan of the series going into that. This is actually what we initially bonded over for fans of the channel. That's a pretty interesting little nugget right there. Was
Yeah.
that kind of broke the ice in the beginning.
Yeah, because our roommate experience, to get into story time, I had previously been roommates with a guy named Shane, who
Which is
Andrew.
Yeah, well, first of all, the combination of Shane and Sean, that is kind of hilarious. I never really thought about that. Um, but yeah, he was my roommate our freshman year because we obviously me and Sean came into college together. We were both in this program where it was like they brought in like what was it, 50 people for each
Yeah,
year.
50 people a year.
Yeah, and like so we were in a kind of like a sort of a tight-knit group. Not tight-knit in the sense that we were all buddies, but like tight-knit in the sense that we all came in together and we're like living in the same place.
Yes.
And Shane was in a similar major to me from what I remember, and so that kind of made sense for us
Really?
to gravitate to each other. And it's like we like took like an intro like journalism class together and stuff. And so like that, yeah, that he was my first roommate, and then things kind of went south toward the end.
Yeah, to say the least.
Yeah. And so then he moved on to having Sean, and so Sean was hearing we knew who each other like I knew who you were before this, obviously, because like we were both in Noah Nelson's class.
Yes.
Yeah. So like I knew who Sean was. I actually had a positive perception of him because I think the first time I remember like noticing you was you were wearing a Kingdom Hearts shirt. So I certainly abided by that.
I remember us talking about it for sure.
Really? Okay, yeah. So
Because
maybe making some small talk over it.
we had made positive small talk with each other, but Shane had made you out to be like some kind of monster, basically.
Yeah.
So I go into this friendship thinking, oh man, this is a bad dude.
Yeah.
And then
What
we
happened with you?
bonded
How come
over
it wasn't your roommate again after that year?
because he didn't live in Prairie Crossing at all after the first
Oh,
year.
really?
The year that we moved in together, I specifically remember I was at oh goodness, my son is trying to get my attention and I'm being a bad dad and ignoring him.
Oh no.
But anyway, we were at a restaurant and Shane was complaining about you to several of the honors college people
Oh
who
gosh.
I actually apparently at that time hung out with, which is weird to me because I don't remember ever being like in with the honors college crowd.
Right.
But I'm like, man, it sounds like you got a real monster, and I'm very apathetic toward my roommate, so let's live together.
Yeah.
Um,
Right. Okay. Makes
and then
sense.
he talked all sorts of trash about you. So when I got told that we were gonna be, I was thinking based on what Shane had said that you were gonna like steal my stuff and be a horrible roommate. And I was horrified, and I talked to the dean of the honors college about it, and
Oh my God.
he said there's a third party involved. I promise you, it's not as bad as it sounds. Please give him a chance. And
Oh, that's
so
nice of
I
him.
was like, okay, I'm not giving this guy a fair shot. I will do that. And so there we were, and we almost immediately, I think the very first night,
Yeah.
bonded over video games. And I
Specifically
specifically
Fallout.
remember, yes. And the other thing that I remember you bringing up as being something that you were personally interested in was disasters.
Oh, really?
Yes, you
Oh, I
said
mean,
I am
okay.
fascinated in disasters, specifically the Hindenburg.
Oh my
That stood out to me like big time that you were very intrigued in the Hindenburg
Well,
disaster
I
or
mean,
the
it is
humanity.
interesting. Have you ever seen that thing go down? It's a sight to see.
I've never. I'm surprised you didn't show me that night because you were like, you went into detail about like just the horror of that man saying, "Oh, the humanity."
He does say that. Oh my God. I do not remember this at all. I just remember us talking about Fallout 3. But I do
Yeah,
remember
you got more than
he
you
was in
bargained for
Edinburgh.
there.
So yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, there you go.
But yeah,
Fan of Fallout 3 and a
and
fan of Edinburgh crashing. One probably a bigger red flag than the other.
goodness gracious. And so all that to say, but we did bond over Fallout big time.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
when Fallout 76 got announced, they actually had a pretty good pitch for it. They announced that it was going to be online, which I was a big fan of. And
Right.
they announced that the base building was going to be a central aspect of it, which
Yeah.
I had never really gotten into in Fallout 4, but had been very, very, very excited about.
Right.
And so for it to be a central part of 76 to me was like, oh, I think when I saw the announcement, I said, they somehow looked into my mind and said, what game would Sean Bates like? And that's what they made.
Yeah.
And then it came out.
Yes.
And I no longer wanted it to be the game that they specifically made for me.
Oh. You and like no one
Because
else at the time.
right, yeah, nobody wanted it to be the game that they made for them because it was a mess. It was exactly everything that you hear about it at launch.
Mhm.
It was that. It
Oh, I
was
know.
that bad.
Because I did play it at launch and it was a mess. I remember it literally crashed while I was making my character for the first time. And
Oh
I
my
was like,
God.
Jesus Christ, this is a disaster.
Yeah. I don't know if mine crashed during the character creation because I didn't really even do much to my character. They had like one of the pre-made faces and I was like, that looks kind of like me.
Sure.
Which it doesn't. But I chose it anyway. I This is kind of a side conversation. I am very bad at approximating my own face in video games. Slow
Yeah,
burn is
honestly, it's
much
harder than you
better.
think.
Yeah, you have a knack for it. I don't know what it is about you that you can actually see the details of a face and make it into the whole face, but I do not carry that same skill. Um, so my guy looks nothing like me, but going into it, even though it was such a cluster, I had a great time.
Yeah.
I played when there were no NPCs.
Right.
I played extensively once the NPCs got there,
Yeah.
and I still play sometimes today. I
Yeah.
haven't played in weeks, but like the grindiness of it. This is a common theme for me.
Yeah.
Grindiness. I like grinding.
Yep.
I know that it's a lot of people's least favorite part in games, but if I find a gameplay loop that I enjoy
Right.
and I can just do that same gameplay loop over and over and see progress, I like that.
Yep. Yep. That
And
makes sense.
Fallout 76 very much has that.
Yeah, it's
You
it's
do
kind
the
of a match made in
events.
heaven in a way because it mixes your love of grinding with your love of Fallout. So it's like bang.
Yeah. The events are good. The map is very, very good.
Yeah.
The quests are pretty good. The
Sure.
story is acceptable.
Okay.
Um, it's I don't know. The map is the best part.
Yeah.
Whoever made the map, I think, is the hero of the game. Whoever designs the events, I think, are also heroes of the game.
Okay.
But I just love it. It's just special to me, and I love Fallout 3, New Vegas, and 4. And honestly, I love 1 and 2, but just none of them have grabbed me like 76 did. And like I said, controversial, but I've played them all.
I know. Yeah,
I've
that's what's so interesting about it. And you had like 76 was the last one you played, right? It's not like you were introduced to the series obviously through 76. You're obviously introduced to it through Fallout 3, like a lot of
through
us.
3.
Yeah.
Yes.
But like, so it's not like, I could see how like people today maybe in like the modern gaming landscape would play 76 first because it is the newest one and they can play it with their friends and stuff. But that's not your case. You are like a more long-standing fan and still 76 is the
Right.
top of the heap for you.
Yeah, it's just special. Being able to build a base is special. I have built my house in multiple houses on that game.
Yeah.
Um I I can't really even put into words why I like it so much. I can have a world in which I can go out and kill and loot and plunder, and then I can go home to my water slide and just sit in the hot tub.
No, yeah. I mean, it knowing what we have learned about you through just this episode, I think it makes sense. And this is a game that probably more so than most than like really even any of the other ones that we've talked about so far, other than Halo 3, which obviously I already love. That I aspire to love this game like you love it. I don't think I will ever love it anywhere near as much as you love it. But again, with the like kind of what I was talking about in the last one, like the carrot of having the platinum trophy and like that giving me something to shoot for. And just
Yeah.
considering my love of the series, I like you love Fallout 3. Fallout 3 was on my list. There's no game that I've spent. I mean, you remember what it was like. There's no game that I've spent more time in than Fallout 4.
Yeah.
When that game came out, there like other than the stuff we were doing for the channel, basically, like there was like a solid 2 years where I was playing like nothing but Fallout 4. Basically,
You
it
spent
was
so much time on Fallout 4 that I am burnt out on Fallout 4 just from watching you. Like
yeah.
I have thought to myself, there's no way that I am going to experience this game as richly as I have watched Andrew experience this game.
Yeah, it was
Um,
something. I'm glad that I've moved past that point in my life. Actually, I don't know if I ever told you this, but last year I played through it again. That was the first time in years, but that was with Reagan because I played through it and let her like make all the choices stuff. Which, by the way, all the story stuff in Fallout 4 totally worked for Reagan. Like the son like ended up being the old man. At the end, she I'm telling you, hook, line, and sinker. She was like literally she was storing stuff in his room for him to play with whenever we got him back.
oh my God, that is delightful.
It was so good. It's so fun. I had it honestly like sort of like even though obviously I'll never be able to like just wholeheartedly love that game like I did when it first came out just because like obviously I know every inch of it. Like being able to like kind of see it through her eyes and like her have her just be that engrossed in the story where it like just totally she was totally falling for this trick. I That was like such an amazing experience. And the reason I bring it up
Yes.
again is because she really did get into the base building stuff. And so the last trophy that I needed for the platinum trophy was getting a settlement to max happiness, which is not easy to do. But I
No.
did do it with that playthrough. And so I now actually do have the platinum trophy in Fallout 4. And it was like
Well done.
it tells you on your this website I use called PSN profiles that like tracks a lot of this stuff for you. And it was like, yeah, time to platinum was like 8 years or whatever, however long it was to, like, from when the game launched. Because obviously I was there on release night playing it to, middle of 2023 whenever I finally got the trophy. But yeah, that was a really cool experience. So that enhanced my love for it as well. It doesn't crack Fallout 4 doesn't crack my top 25 just in the sense of there's a lot of games that realistically I played that are better than Fallout 4. But in terms of time played, there's no way that I've played another game more than that one. And so that does sort of give me pause when it comes to 76 just because I don't necessarily want to devote that much time to a game again. But I do like the idea of getting into it enough to like just like get all the trophies and stuff. And so I hope that someday actually was planning on, and you might remember this, I was planning on giving 76 another shot this year. And
Yes.
literally I'm pretty sure it's on my console right now. Technically I could start it up anytime. But like it was such a like I downloaded it and then like there was like all these patches and it was just taking forever. And by the time that the
Mm.
game was like ready to go, I had like already started something else.
That's
um,
how it goes. With
yeah,
with it being an MMO, they patch it a lot.
you're right.
So that's a big downside to it.
Yeah, yeah. But I love the idea that there's a Fallout game that is beloved by people like you who are fans of the series. And it's not just you. I mean, this game really has had like a huge resurgence, obviously.
Oh yeah,
And
especially since
like
the show.
right, right. And not to mention just like the decision to bring NPCs back into the game. I think that helped a lot. Just
Oh
because I remember playing
yes.
it before there were NPCs as well. And I was just I just found it kind of dull. But like now with like there being like actual quests in there basically. I do think that I could really get into it. So I do aspire to. I think this one is one. Unlike some of the other ones that we've discussed, I think it's a much higher chance that I actually do get into this game and give it a real go. So you have to stay tuned on that. If I do, I'll come back on the podcast and maybe we'll talk about it some more if I really get into the game.
Well, that's great. One of these days.
Yeah.
And another one that you might play one of these days, number 17, Dead Rising.
Dead Rising. Okay, now this to me reeks of Sean Bates, 2006. He has an Xbox 360. He's looking for stuff to play. Enter Dead Rising. Am I correct?
So you'd be somewhat correct, but you would
Okay.
be more correct if you said Sean Bates doesn't have the doesn't have the Xbox 360, sees Dead Rising, has incentive to get the Xbox 360.
Oh, okay. So it was to that degree. You were hyped for Dead
Yes.
Rising.
I mentioned my friend Brian earlier in the
Yeah.
podcast. Brian's house is where I first played Dead Rising.
Okay.
I tried it over at his house. I don't think I had a 360 yet.
Yeah,
I think
probably
he had
not,
a
because this was an
360 and
early
I
360
didn't.
game. Yeah.
Yeah, and we tried it, and I was horrible at the game when I was at his house, but I was having a great time. I just stuck to the intro area, and I was just going in every single store and
Yeah.
finding every single weapon that I could find, and I was just killing zombies.
Yeah.
And now I know where almost every item in the game is located,
Okay.
and I know almost every inch of the game.
Sure.
And so, like, I've been playing the remake, and it is such a different experience for me.
Yeah. That's interesting. I was
Because
going
the
to ask you about
game,
that, because I had heard about that, because like that remake is like brand new, right?
yes,
Okay.
yeah, it is. It's brand new.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that I know every inch of the game is still hard and still stressful. I
Really?
still take damage, even though I'm like, I know exactly how to move to avoid the zombies. Well, clearly I don't because I fucking take damage, but I thought I did.
Yeah.
And you know all the combos that you're gonna learn as you level up, and all the little secret experience spots and all of this and that. It's just, but there is a lot of that. There are a lot of secrets in that game. There are a lot of cosmetic items that are fun to find. There are a lot of weapons that just they're not good, but they feel good to use. It feels funny to pick up a potted plant and hit a zombie with it.
Sure.
Um, and
I-
that kind of charm just really carries Dead Rising very, very far in my mind.
Yeah. It definitely feels like a very much of its time, right? Like that this is like exactly what people wanted in 2006 or whenever it was that it came out.
Yeah. It's what I want now. Like,
Yeah.
how can you sum up Dead Rising? It's freedom. That is
Sure.
what a lot of people really wanted in video games in 2006 was the
Definitely.
freedom to feel like you could do whatever the fuck you want. Nowadays, people want a little more narrowed down. I want to have my experience and finish it.
Right.
But back then, your goal was I want a game that I can play over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I don't want to feel like I have finished this game. And the fact that you can kill the population of Willamette, Wisconsin, or whatever the town is that's in the game. I'm pretty sure it's Willamette, Wisconsin is the name of the place. And they have a population of approximately 53,590 or some shit like that.
Okay.
And you get an achievement if you kill that many zombies in the game. And if you get that achievement, you get the Mega Man blaster.
Yeah, I
in your
did
next
hear that you
playthrough.
could get the Mega Man because it's a Capcom game, so that is kind of awesome.
Yes, and it's it's fucking to get that many kills, you have to basically so there's a garage, there's an underground garage, and that is the most populated area of zombies.
Okay.
If you know where every car spawns in the game, you can drive yourself in a loop where you kill the maximum amount of zombies possible. And that is how you get the achievement to get the Mega Buster is to play. It takes 6 to 8 hours, I
Oh
would
my
say,
gosh.
of driving this one loop over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And I've done that twice.
I believe it. That does sound like a very Sean thing to do. Well, it's interesting. This is an interesting game because I feel like when I hear people talk about Dead Rising that really love it, like they really, really love it. It's a game that like really I think, stuck with people, I think. And it's kind of interesting because generally I don't really give a crap about zombies, but like I do think that there's like some interesting things going on with the structure of this game where you talk about how it is very open, but also isn't it like there's like persistent stuff happening where like if you don't save people within a certain time, like they're dead, right? Like I love that.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, there's a very specific way you can play this game. There is a correct way to play the game.
Yeah, yeah. That is very
But it gives you the freedom to where if you don't play the right way, it doesn't fuck you. You might
yeah,
not get the ending you want,
sure,
but you can play the game. You can dick around the whole time. You can have a great time and not get anything accomplished at all.
sure.
Just exploring the mall, never doing any missions. You can have a fun playthrough of that game.
Yeah, yeah. It's
And that's
definitely
something I love about it.
yeah. It definitely it's a cool. It's interesting how the industry continues to evolve because like Dead Rising, a game like Dead Rising today, like it would probably be like an indie game or something that wouldn't get like the like when this game came out in 2006, this was, and we've kind of talked about this on the channel before, like back in this era, like this is the kind of game that was getting the AAA funding, right? Like this was considered like a AAA game at the time. Which is just so different to how AAA games are made today, which I think is just like a really interesting evolution. It's interesting to track that
I
evolution.
I think that with the no, I already take back what I was about to say. I
Okay,
was about to say with the size of the mall, I think it is AAA worthy, but no, um, no, it was very 2006 AAA, like you
right,
say, because the size, you see how the Dead Rising games themselves upped in scale
sure,
as they came out. And they never, to me, I only played Dead Risings 1 and 2. I played a little bit of 3, but I never had an X1, so I only got to play it at my brother-in-law's house.
right.
Um, and he's not even my, never mind. Family stuff.
Okay.
But I just never really got into 3 and 4 as
Yeah.
they scaled up and up.
To be honest, I
Uh,
didn't even know that there were that many.
yeah, they made 4 of them.
Yeah. See, well,
Uh,
that's kind of what I'm saying. Like they kind of, it seems like as they sort of tried to scale up, they probably tried to sort of bring in more of like how games are made in the more modern era. But I do like that this is a sort of like a point in time where like this is what companies like Capcom were putting their money in, and people loved it.
yeah, just the fact of the idea. It was an era where interacting with your environment was really important to the
Yeah,
player.
sure.
And that was what this game was. Everything in your environment you could pick up and hit a zombie with it.
Right.
And that was fucking sweet. You could
Sure.
pick up the Lego masks off of the shelf and put them on the zombie's head, and the
Right.
zombie would be blind, and you could kill it with a fucking. I don't think a loaf of bread was actually a weapon. I was about to say you could kill it with a loaf of bread. I think you had to eat the loaves of bread, unfortunately.
Oh,
But like anything else, you could kill it with a plastic lightsaber.
right. Yeah.
Um, it took a lot of hits, but you could do it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, back in 2006, that was freaking sweet.
Yeah. And even today, it's definitely there's like you said, there's a certain charm to that I think probably still persists today. So it's cool that they made the remake, and hopefully people are sort of reminding themselves of why they thought this game was cool back in the day.
Yeah, quite frankly, about the remake, real quick before we move on.
Okay.
I got it and I've played it for about an hour, and they did a good job, in my opinion, with the changes they made.
Nice.
I know a lot of people were mad about the censorship, but I think we have
Oh.
matured as gamers in the
Okay, I
time
believe
since
it.
2006,
Yeah, yeah.
and we can deal with a little bit of censorship because before you could take panty shots and now you can't.
Okay. Yes.
And I quite frankly think that was a good thing. But really, what the change should have been that they talked about on Reddit instead of the fucking panty shots, which was the only thing I really heard about, was the gunplay, which they made much better. It's actually worth it to use a pistol in the Dead Rising remake, whereas the pistols were worth less than a 2 by 4 in the
Okay.
original Dead Rising.
Nice. Well, that's good to hear.
But anyway,
We have come a long
so
way in terms of gameplay since 2006, I will say. So it's nice to see that is coming through in the remade version.
yes. So number 16, Resident Evil Village.
Okay. Yeah, speaking of more modern game, this is kind of one of the more recent picks I would say on this list. Now it's also kind of interesting because it's sticking with the zombie theme. I can't say that I've never played a Resident Evil. It was this is also kind of a similar situation with Diablo 3 where I've like dabbled, right? So I played a little bit of Resident Evil 4. back in the day on the PlayStation 2. And then I, you'll remember this, watched Duhyun, our friend from college, play about an hour of Revelation
Yes!
2.
Dude, Hyun was so scared.
Yes, he was. And it's still, I love that happened because it's still on. If you look at my profile on PlayStation, it's still on there. Resident Evil Revelations 2, like 1 hour 40.
That was awesome.
Yeah, that was a good
I
experience.
wish we had recorded that.
Yeah, that would have. Oh man, that would have been so smart. I was that the same day where he came over and just like beat my ass in Tekken 4. Do you remember?
Maybe we hung out. We thought we were going to live with him for a time, right? So we
That's
actually hung out with
right.
him several times
Yeah, we were
in kind of a
preparing
short
ourselves.
period.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, there was one time. Well, he came over and he wanted to play a wrestling game. And I was like, okay, but I gotta tell you, I actually do have some experience in these things. So I beat his ass in whatever Resident or whatever wrestling game we played. It was probably like 2014 or 2013 or something like that. And then he was like, "All right, well that was fun. But why don't we play some Tekken 4?" And like he didn't tell me that he like had played the shit out of this game. And so he was just doing like 10-hit combos on me, and I was just flying through the air all over the place, just absolutely humbling my ass
Oh
that
man.
wrestling game. So I probably deserved it. But that was a fun experience too. But yes, also him playing Resident Evil Revelations 2, which I feel like it's kind of a deep cut for this series. But Village, on the other hand, I remember a lot of people talking about this. So what was so great? Obviously, this is a series that you spent more time with. So for Village to be this high, that's a pretty high endorsement for such a recent game.
It's like going to an amusement park to me. Every part of the game is like a ride where you have a clear entry and I'm trying to think of how to make this analogy really work because it works in my mind, but I'm not sure how to make it make sense. Like if you've been to Disney World, it makes a little more sense because even waiting in line at Disney World is an experience.
Yes.
And getting into a portion of a level in Resident Evil Village is an experience where you're getting together your loot and you're starting to prepare. You're maybe seeing a few of the werewolves or whatever shit is going to attack you.
Okay.
But it's like Resident Evil 4 perfected in a way to me, the way they divided it up, because the games have a lot of parallels in ways that are hard for me to describe to someone who has not finished either. But they have different sections of play. Like it starts off at more of a village vibe, and then you kind of advance through different areas where by the end it's more of an industrial vibe, and you're kind of starting to get in on what's going on in the game and why, like what you're fighting exactly, why these villagers are randomly freaking out and becoming werewolves and shit. Um, and it's just such a well-paced game. The
Yeah.
horror is good. I would not say I was scared by Resident Evil 8, but I was at the same time. I didn't finish it in VR because I got to the
Really?
scary part.
Wow. Okay.
Which that was why I dropped $1,100
Yeah.
upon the announcement of Resident Evil 8 VR. Because I just had it on PS4 and I
Right.
was happy with that. And then they announced it was going to be in VR, and I had played a certain other game on this list so many times
Oh, yeah.
that I was like, okay, I've got to get this.
Yeah. And
Um,
Village is in first person, so I could see how that would work even better in VR.
yes, it's great. Just the tutorial for Resident Evil Village VR
Yeah.
is horrifying.
Oh,
They just have you in this garage and they like tell you how to use your flashlight and they tell you how to get items and pull your gun out and whatnot. And it's just so creepy because you're like, you're teaching me how to pull my gun out. Is something about to attack me? Nothing does. Spoiler
okay.
alert.
All right.
So nothing to be afraid of, actually. But when you don't know that, it's
Yeah.
very scary.
Sure.
Um, and Village, I'm not even really counting I guess I am kind of counting the VR in this entry because spoiler alert, Village VR does not get its own entry on my top 25.
Right.
It's a little bit clunky is the problem. There were
Okay.
times where I'd be reaching for my gun and I would have trouble getting it.
Yeah. Lazy.
And that's very important in VR is being able to feel like like your gun is actually on your hip to
Right.
me. Um, but Village itself is masterfully crafted. I think Ethan Winters is a hilarious character. I don't think he's supposed to be, but he makes me laugh
Yeah, I've
with
heard a lot of people say
how,
that.
yeah, he's just a fucking cheeseball.
Yeah.
Very, very good horror protagonist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I know what you kind of going back to the Disney World analogy. I kind of know what you mean. Not in the sense, obviously, I haven't played Resident Evil Village, but I do know. So BioShock is a game that I feel that with, where you go into a new
yes,
area. Yeah, you go into a new area, and yeah, it's like it's a contained experience in that area, and stuff is part of what it is, at least in BioShock, is BioShock doesn't really have cutscenes. Like it does have cutscenes, absolutely, but they're always like from your perspective, and like you're
right.
like stuff is happening while you're moving through these things, which is exactly how it works at Disney World. And so, like, yeah, I do know what you mean in terms of that a game having that kind of experience.
Yes, I'm very well put. I'm glad you knew what I meant there.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's another good example.
Yeah. Now, I am interested in Resident Evil Village and the series in general. I appreciate that it's a series that's been around for so long, but the thing about that is also it's like a dual-edged sword because you know how I am. I always like to be like a completionist with these things, and so like generally whenever I get into a series, I try like an example is I played through all of the Zelda games except for now
Right.
I'm still working my way through Tears of the Kingdom, obviously, and then now they just had this new one come out, Echoes of Wisdom.
Echo of Whispers or
Yeah, I
whatever.
gotta play that too. But so it is kind of a pain that they keep releasing them so damn fast. But like other than that, like I've played all the back stuff. And so like I feel like if I really wanted to get in Resident Evil, I would want to do that where I would go through the whole series. But there's so many
Oh, that's a
Resident
horrible
Evil games
idea.
that it's like
Horrible
such an
idea.
insurmountable climb.
Dude, I think a good idea would be to play four by yourself,
Okay.
play or with Reagan, or I think it would be cool to play five for the channel because that's a
Yes, I
co-op
do agree with
game.
that.
And then eight because it's fucking awesome, seven because it's fucking awesome,
Okay.
and uh, honestly, I have not played the other remakes, but they
Yeah, people
look
say that they're kind
awesome.
of awesome. Yeah. Particularly two, I hear is really great.
Both two and three remakes look very, very cool to me. So
Yeah.
I would advise both, but I've played neither.
Right.
But
Well,
Resident Evil
you
as a
have pretty
series
much
is great.
described most of the mainline entries, though.
That's true. I skipped one because I'm going to be honest, I have never had any interest in playing the original Resident Evil.
Yeah. Well, they did do because like you can get it on modern consoles now, where it's like because they did a GameCube port back in the day, which looked amazing compared to the PlayStation 1 version, obviously. And then
Yeah,
they've kind of ported that version, I think, forward where you can play it on like the PS4 and 5 and stuff. So if I ever played it, obviously I'll
right.
not the
And
PS1
they
version.
actually now bringing up again my friend Brian, who
Okay.
was my first friend who owned the Wii. He
Wow.
had a rail shooter Resident Evil game on the
Yes.
Wii
That does sound kind of
that
fun.
was a lot of fun, and
Yeah.
it went through several different Resident Evil games.
Yeah. Yeah. I
But
don't
that
remember what that's
game,
called, but I know what you're referring to.
Umbrella Chronicles,
Oh,
I
okay. That's
believe,
right. That's
is the
right.
name of it,
Yeah.
and that game is pretty fucking sweet.
Yeah. So
Uh,
there is some cool there's a lot of cool stuff with the history. I really it's cool for for a series to be around as long as this one has and for it to be, like every time a Resident Evil game comes out, it does feel like an event. It's like it's obviously it's not like it's, faded into obscurity. If anything, I feel like it's grown into, where it's like a bigger deal now maybe than it was even. I mean, obviously Resident Evil 4 when it came out was a huge deal. But
oh yeah,
other than that, like the when these games are coming out these days, I feel like it's maybe like bigger than it's ever been.
yeah, yeah. It's a dynasty.
Yeah. So anyway, maybe one of
Uh,
these days I'll start chipping away at that granite, but that's a story for another day.
oh yeah. So number 15, Tropico 5.
Tropico 5. Okay, now tell us about this. Is this like a city builder?
Yes, that
Okay.
is, it's an island builder.
An island builder. Okay.
You have different resources on your island that are available to you. You're basically a communist colonist.
Okay.
Um, or you can choose to be a democracy, but you are a colonist,
Okay.
and pretty much are trying to build up this island to have the greatest economy possible, to make the greatest alliances possible, to have a military force that can defend itself from any oncoming threats, which frankly are not very many. You get attacked like maybe twice through the whole campaign.
Oh.
Um, how to describe Tropico 5? It's got a banging soundtrack. Like
Okay.
honestly, maybe the greatest soundtrack in the history of gaming, in my
Wow.
opinion.
Okay. Well, that's a bold claim.
That's but it's a large part of the reason why it's on this list.
Is it just like kind of
Um,
islandy sounding music? Like
yes,
Hawaiian
but
sounding or something? I don't know.
it's spicy though. Like
Okay.
I won't sing it. I'm sorry. I was about to get a little too into it.
Okay.
But it's very good.
Now,
Latin.
okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. So, how does it compare to, obviously, not to spoil anything, but another game that I feel like is probably somewhat in this mold is the Civilization series, where you're building stuff up. It kind of what you were describing there sounds similar. So, how does
You
this like
don't
differ? It's not like turn-based, right?
It's not turn-based, it's real time, and it's more about keeping your people happy than it is building the strongest civilization. You
Okay.
don't have to go to war with anyone. You don't have, well, you get attacked sometimes, but
Okay.
that's not very often. And if you do a shitty job, then your people might rebel against you and attack you.
I want that.
And you might need a military for that. For your own people, which is kind of fucked up,
Yeah.
but intentionally
That's
so.
something
It's
in line.
very self-aware. Like they don't act like this is like a like yeah yes you're doing the main voice that talks to you is like a very it's like El Presidente.
Okay. Yeah.
And I don't know how can I describe Tropico 5 in a way that doesn't just make it sound like other city builders because
Well,
it's not.
it does sound fun. Like, how does it compare to like so when I hear about city builders, obviously like the old standby is SimCity, and then like in more recent
Right.
times it'd be like a City Skylines. I know that was kind of a big one, but that was more like a city,
Like
a mega city like you would expect today, right?
so in SimCity, you just create zoning and you know that you have a certain employment rate based on your zoning. You know, you have a certain housing rate based on your zoning and a certain commercial rate.
Okay.
In Tropico, you know literally exactly specifically what business you made. You make the town hall, you make the bar, you make the theater, you make the doctor's office, which you do in SimCity as well. But it's not about zoning. It's about knowing I made this business, so I need to make this much housing next to it because my people are going to need to work there,
Sure.
and the people that work there are going to need housing. And in order for this industry to thrive, I'm going to need lumber. And so I need to make a lumber mill out here in the woods because that's where I'm going to be able to chop the trees down. And then in order to make cars for my people to have traffic, I need to mine fucking aluminum or whatever. I can't remember if you can actually mine aluminum in Tropico 5, but it's just a lot more in the weeds of it.
Okay. So like yeah, more
And
granular sounds like.
do what it sounds
I
like?
said more granular. It sounds like where you're doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So now,
It's
how do
just
you get into this? Like, is it like I feel like I remember this being like a PlayStation Plus game or something.
it was.
Is
That's
that
exactly
you
how
got
I
into
got
it?
into it.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's what a success! What a success for that this is a success story for people that are putting their games on PS Plus.
Yeah, because I've not only have I bought another copy of this game since on Steam, but I've bought all the DLC for it.
Right, right.
So yes, a PS Plus success story big time because
Awesome.
I had heard of Tropico before, but I had never really thought of buying it.
Yeah.
And then I got it for free and I played it and I was like, holy shit, this game is awesome.
Yeah, it might have been a free game like when we were in college. Like I feel like I
It
remember.
was.
Yeah, so I feel like I remember this one coming through, so I might actually have it on my profile as well. I think I do actually.
Oh, that's
So
excellent. You
yeah.
should try it sometime.
Yeah, honestly, it does sound fun. The closest this is gonna be funny. The closest game that I think I've played to what you are describing, I think, is Legoland on the PC. Like back in
Oh
like
my
the
God.
early, like that was either late 90s or early 2000s. Look at like the original like run of Lego games. They were like all like PC. This is like I feel like this is even like pre Windows XP Lego games. And my friend across the so my mom was a teacher, and there was this, so like you kind of got to know all the teachers who had kids in elementary, because teachers kind of had to like hang out a little bit longer after school was over to like kind of get ready for the next
Mm.
day or whatever. And it's like all the teachers would do that, and their kids would just they couldn't they didn't really have any way to get home or anything from. I mean, I guess they could have taken the bus or whatever, but that's not what we did. We all just kind of waited there because it wasn't like a super long time. We would just
Yeah.
go, we would just stay there in the school when we were young, or we would walk over there from one of the other schools to while we were waiting for our moms to get ready to go. And so like there was like a small group of us that would kind of hang out and stuff. And there was this other guy that I was friends with that was he's still to this day like, and I want to do it actually a podcast episode with him where he's talking ranking like roller coasters because he loves like theme parks and roller coasters and that kind of thing. And it was him that had Legoland. And I remember I was like, oh, this is awesome. So it was like you were building this Legoland park, but you kind of had to balance. It was obviously geared more toward children, but you had to like balance some stuff, and you had to keep people happy, and you had to like bring in, you had to like balance these different sort of things you brought into the park. So like you had to have like a certain amount of rides, you had a certain amount of stores, and like you had to like grow like hedges. I remember like a big
Oh
thing,
wow.
and like like just greenery and things like that. So that's
That
probably the
sounds
closest.
awesome.
Yeah, it's probably the closest thing. And of course, it's all Legos. That's probably the closest thing I've ever experienced to kind of what you're describing. But obviously, I'm sure Tropico is a much richer experience probably than
It
Lego.
sounds more like Roller Coaster Tycoon.
Yeah, I think that it had some similarities to Roller Coaster Tycoon as well, which I've never actually played. But it was a lot simpler than that. Like whenever you would build a roller coaster, you weren't like designing it from scratch. You would just like it was like a grid, and it was just like
Oh, you
boom.
just lay it down.
Yeah, you'd plop it down. It's like there it is for you. You know what I mean? So it was pretty.
Ah,
Yeah.
well, that still sounds pretty sweet though,
Yeah,
honestly,
it
for a
wasn't
Lego
bad,
game.
honestly. It'd be an interesting one if they. I doubt that'll ever come back, but so much stuff gets remastered and brought back these days. You never know.
Yeah. All right. So number 14, as previously alluded to,
Yes.
Civilization 5.
Civilization 5. So this is another one. I've not played Civilization 5, but I am super like in terms of games that we discussed, I'm very interested in this series, particularly because it's turn-based. I love turn-based, and it does sound like you have a lot of options at your disposal and a lot of strategy. So the closest thing I've
Yes.
come is you'll remember I actually watched you play a little bit. This was like I think before we started the channel, but we were kind of discussing it, or maybe it was like maybe I'm sure you had your channel at this point, but like pre Wildfire Gaming channel. But like we were kind of like I remember going into your room and like watching you play this for a while. But that was like kind of the extent of my experience with Civilization. But I know for you, you've put a lot of time right into this series.
I have put over 700 hours into Civilization 5. I
Yeah,
think it is quite possible that it is my most played game of all time.
really interesting. Yeah,
Yes,
was
in
that
terms of
700
raw
hours? I can
hours.
believe it. I think my number one is obviously it's Fallout 4, but I think on PlayStation it says I'm definitely over the 1,000 hour mark. It's like 1,000.
Oh my God.
Like I don't know. Not I don't even know if it gets
You
to
played
11.
over 1,000 hours of Fallout 4?
It's I mean, yeah, I did.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah. It's probably could do well to get a little bit of that time back, honestly, but hey, I just have fun at the time.
We're still young.
Yeah. But obviously Civilization 5 is probably a much deeper and richer experience of Fallout 4. So yeah, talk to us about like what you do and like how you got into this.
So, just the strategy of it is so deep. The amount of ways that you can win that game and the amount of time that it takes to win in only one fashion, it probably God, how long would I say is the average
Oh,
Civilization 5
good question.
match? I would say probably about 30 hours.
Okay. Wow. So like a
Because
RPG level, a JRPG level length.
for just one campaign, and
Yeah.
that's just to say win a science victory.
Right.
Um, and I have played to the point I have not yet beaten it on the second highest difficulty. I have not really even tried it on the highest difficulty because I think the way they describe the difficulty is only the best players in the world will beat this. Um, and I believe it because the second highest difficulty is so absolutely ridiculous that you have to play every turn perfectly and basically get the perfect start just to stand a chance.
Oh man.
The way, God, how to describe Civilization to someone who's never played it
Well, is it
before?
kind of like does it have kind of like elements of what you would expect from like a strategy board game kind of because like, it's got the turn-based
Yes,
nature to it. Yeah.
it's very board game-ish in nature because you're on a grid. You, God, I guess, have you ever played Settlers of Catan?
No? Is that a board game?
That's a board game. It's
Okay.
a very fun board game.
It's
And it's not super duper actually like Settlers of Catan, but I haven't played that many board games to have a
right.
strong parallel. Um, it's so good. Why am I having such a hard time describing it? You
Well,
have
what's interesting?
culture and
Okay.
religion and
Right. That's what I was
gold.
gonna say. Like you have these different like sort of aspects of things that you're building up, and you kind of like plan out your rise by picking one that you're going to specialize in, right?
Right. Typically, you need to focus on one or the other. You can win by overwhelming the culture of your opponents. You can win by launching a rocket to the moon.
Right.
You can win by dominating everyone with your military. And you can win by diplomatic victory, in which you have so many votes from city-states that you technically just vote yourself the ruler of the world.
Wow.
Um,
That sounds fun.
and all of which are very fun ways of playing because the
Yeah.
science victory, you have to pretty much, in any way other than the military victory, you have to manage your diplomacy so that somebody doesn't just come kill you while you're dominating them.
Oh, sure. Yeah. That's a good point. That
Because
sounds
the
great.
do I?
I said it sounds great.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
the higher and higher you get in difficulty, the more likely they are to want to just come kill you when you start to dominate.
Sure.
And
Sure.
you have to manage out how am I going to balance having a military that can defend myself with also having the most academic society in the entire world,
Right.
so that I am the first one to launch the rocket,
Right.
or the most culturally adept society that I am the one who is creating the world wonders, who is creating the most art and the most culture in general, so that people, when somebody gets dominated by your culture, they come to you in a meeting and they say, "Our people are wearing your blue jeans and listening to your music,"
Okay.
and uh, and that's how you know you've dominated them. They're wearing your blue jeans now.
Yeah.
Um,
A signifier of all cultural dominance.
yes, it seemed very. It's a very Western centric game.
Sure.
Um, but it's just fucking fun getting to that point.
And I've heard
The
one thing I've heard about this too is like, and it's a really interesting thing to think about. And like, there's other games that do this as well, but I've heard it specifically about Civilization, which is, obviously he's got his name plastered on all of them. Is Sid Meier, the creator of this series or whatever.
oh
And
yes,
he gave an interview where he was talking about why Civilization is so addictive, and he said it's because when you play this game, you are always thinking about what you're gonna do next, right?
right.
And so whenever you're always thinking about what you're gonna do next, it's hard to know when to stop.
Yes, and that's how, you know, I actually oftentimes miss my old job of working as a typist. I
Yeah.
would have one screen with my trial on it, and then the other screen with Civilization 5 on it.
Okay.
And God, did I waste a bunch of working time doing one more turn or sometimes it boosted my productivity actually, because I would tell myself, okay, I can play one turn per page I type.
Ah,
And so that would be a driving force to type that next page because I knew I could take one more turn of civilization.
sure. God, I love that it's a turn-based thing. So like, how does it work? So like, you take your turn and then you just kind of watch the CPU or whoever you're playing against kind of do their turn, so you kind of have an idea of what
It
they're doing.
it tells you that they're doing something. You don't
Okay.
really watch them do it. You can look around after, and you have to have spies in the other civilizations typically to know what they're doing or be built right next to them. And with the borders, yeah, you typically got to have spies to know what they're doing,
Okay.
or alliances where you are within their borders. But
God.
that's a whole. It's such an in-depth. I would
Yeah.
love to play that together sometime as
Oh,
a
that sounds great.
series.
Yeah, that sounds absolutely phenomenal. I would love to do that as well. Now, I guess the last question I have on this is, obviously your Civ 5 is your pick here. It's not the most recent in the series because they do have a Civ 6, and I know that a Civ 7 is on the horizon. It's been announced. So
Yes.
is it just like the matter of you spent the most time with 5, so therefore it's your favorite, or do you think that it does do things better than like 6, for instance?
I personally like five more than six. Six made the game more complicated
Really? Okay.
intentionally.
Sure.
They wanted it, and I just thought it was hard enough as it was.
Okay.
Call me simple-minded, whatever. But I don't like that I have to like in Civilization 5, you can just build a road.
Okay.
In Civilization 6, the only way to create a road is through establishing a trade route between places.
Ah,
And roads build naturally through your trade routes.
interesting.
Do I think that is creative? Yes. Do I like it more? No.
Yeah. Okay.
So
It makes sense because like
Civilization
you spent so
6,
much, we spent so much time doing it one way, and then like now you have to like wire your brain to think of it another way. I can see how that would be tough.
right. It's just different. And
Yeah.
I just didn't like it as much.
Now, did you play? Was 5 the first one you played, or did you play some of the older ones?
Yes.
Okay,
5 was the first one I played. So I've only played 5 and 6.
got it.
And I intend to play 7.
Yes, yeah, it does look awesome, doesn't it? I saw the trailer for it, and I was like, God damn, like these games look so good to me. Like again, like I said, in terms of games like on your list that I think I could really get into, I do think Civilization is very high. Like, and especially this in terms of games that I haven't played, and also just sort of experiences that I haven't had because I've never really played a game like Civilization. Like, it's very high on my list of I need to experience this.
Yes, I think it's definitely, yeah, Civ 5, I would suggest it for anyone, even if you don't like strategy games.
Right. And I think it's something that Reagan could get into too, because she also likes strategy games and board games and stuff like that. So I think that there would be some I think this is something that she could get into as well. So uh
Oh,
I
yeah.
I see that being something hopefully relatively soon that we try and get into.
Excellent. So moving on to
Oh
number
boy.
13,
Yeah.
another rhythm game, Guitar
Yes.
Hero 3.
Speaking of things that I've gotten into, yeah, Guitar Hero 3, like you, I have a ton of history with this one. Now I've actually thought about, in terms of, 'cause I have like a pretty long list of things or of episode ideas on the podcast. I've actually floated the idea of even doing a Guitar Hero like Rock Band focused episode at some point because that really did have like a huge impact on me, and people in my family as well. Like in terms of like getting us into music, and like my brother became like an actual real life guitarist because of Guitar Hero and stuff like that. Like
That's
this was like a huge game for us. But like, what about you? Was 3 like your first one, or did you come into the series earlier? Talk about your history with Guitar Hero.
no, I came into the series shockingly through hanging out with my friend Brian.
Oh,
Uh,
Brian, yet again.
Brian strikes again. I'm gonna have to send him this episode. He's been
Yeah,
referenced so many
totally.
times. But he had Guitar Hero at first, and I played at his house a lot. He and I used to hang out very frequently.
And this is
I'm
Guitar
surprised I
Hero
never
1.
brought him up to you before. Yes, Guitar Hero 1.
Okay,
He had it way before I did. I got Guitar Hero the Christmas after Guitar Hero 2 came out
okay. So 2 was your first one that you owned.
that I owned. Yes.
That's so interesting
I
because that's
got 1 and 2 at the same time.
Oh, really? Okay. So I came into it with 2. I also played it at a friend's house for the first time. It was my friend David. Shout out to David. But that was kind of interesting because like Yeah, that's kind of how it was when you were a kid. Like before reading magazines and stuff like that, that was kind of how you found out about other games. Was like you would go over to your friend's house and like you'd see what they played, and you'd be like, "Oh, this thing looks fucking dope as hell." And
Yeah.
so like, Guitar Hero 2, obviously, I saw that for the first time. I was like, "Well, this is freaking awesome!" And so yeah, I got Guitar Hero 2 pretty shortly after that.
Yeah. And then so I had one and two, and three came out, and it just, I don't know, the reason
It's
that it's
Yeah,
on
I
there,
agree. I
it's,
think it's the best one too.
yeah, there's just something about it. It's just fucking good.
Yeah,
It's
it's
just
just
a great, great game.
Yeah, like this was it's interesting because this was there was a marked difference between 3 and the ones that came before because 3 was actually the first one that was developed by Neversoft, which was the Tony Hawk studio. 'Cause
Yeah.
before that it was Harmonix and they went on to make Rock Band, which those were obviously excellent and perhaps we'll discuss that as well. But with Guitar Hero 3, like that was I do think like the like in some ways I like it was a shift in art style. By the way, were you playing this on the PS2?
Yes. Yes, I
Okay.
was.
Yeah, so me too. And like I think you could play this was kind of one that came out like at the intersection of the console generation, right? So like they did make it for the newer generation of stuff, but I think a lot of us played it on the older ones because we already had the instruments for the older consoles, right? So like it made sense for us to like
Exactly.
stick with the older one. And so like in some ways I remember thinking it was a step down in terms of the art style because I do like the art style of Guitar Hero 2 a lot. And 3 was like kind of a different sort of style to it. But I do think the presentation of the gameplay itself, like you got I felt like you got a little bit more of a top-down view of the note highway. And so like I just felt like I always felt a little bit more comfortable with the gameplay of 3 compared to 2. And then, it just really had a great like it was a little bit more cartoonish, I would say, than 2 in terms of like it had a story kind of where you were this band that was like coming up or whatever, and like you face the
Yeah.
devil at the end and stuff like that.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, I liked that a lot too. And then also just, you know, the lineup of music on it, like it was kind of tough to beat. There was like a lot of really good stuff on there.
Yes. And I have this classic memory
Oh, good.
of I went to a Guitar Hero tournament.
Oh, good.
I was about, I want to say like 15
Okay.
maybe. And Guitar Hero Aerosmith was the newest one.
Okay.
So they had Guitar Hero Aerosmith that people were competing on, but Guitar Hero 3 that everyone was warming up on.
Got it.
And I was watching these people. I didn't even have Aerosmith. I never got it.
I did actually.
Uh, nice. I was watching these people just smash on 3. They were completely fucking owning me in the warm-ups.
Yeah.
And then but none of them had Aerosmith either. And I was apparently the best at sight reading, except for this 25-year-old man who came from like Dallas to
Wow.
this tournament in Texarkana because he, by his own admission, traveled around to Guitar Hero tournaments and just beat kids
Wow.
as a 25-year-old man.
That's something.
Um, yeah, back in, let's see, this was
Oh
16
seven.
years ago
Okay.
approximately. So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, around that time. Um, and yeah, even though it's not really a Guitar Hero 3 memory, getting second place in that tournament, of that Aerosmith tournament where everybody was kind of kicking my ass at the game that I was more familiar with because I did not even have the game that we were competing on,
Yeah.
was a good time.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, I was a huge fan of Aerosmith growing up, so that guy was super excited about Guitar Hero Aerosmith, and that was actually the one that came out right after 3, and so it was basically just today it would have just been an expansion to Guitar Hero 3 to be honest. But I do
Right.
I do think that then it was they were putting out so many games there toward the end. I do think that is what ultimately led to the downfall of the series because people just kind of got sick of buying all the new ones and like they just sort of that it's Activision for you, right? Like they just they just overdid
Just
it. They got too
oversaturated it.
greedy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that was just kind of the end of it. But man, like during that period, like I think it's hard for people if you weren't there, it's hard probably for people to understand, but it was so like everybody played Guitar Hero and it was awesome.
Yes, it was such a craze.
Yeah.
So, number 12, I believe we're on.
Yes.
Rockman 2.
Okay, so this is interesting because this, like I mentioned, Harmonix obviously went. They split from it was right after Guitar Hero 2. They split to go make Rock Band, while Neversoft took over Guitar Hero, and so that inherently led to a rivalry between those two, uh, those two
Because
series.
yeah.
And you can see here on Sean's list which one came out on top. It's Rock Band 2.
Yes. The addition of the drums is just too big to overlook.
Yeah,
And I
I was
know
gonna
that there
ask
was
you about
Guitar
that
Hero
because
World Tour,
yeah,
but
because Sean is a he's a obviously we talked about the music at the jump here, but he is an actual drummer. That was like his that was your first instrument, right? Was the drums. So
yes.
that was I was gonna ask if that was ended up being like as big of a thing for you as the guitar stuff that we were all used to before that.
Oh yeah, the drums were a much bigger deal for me.
Okay,
I played them. Goodness, now my baby was talking about drums even. Um, I I had been a drummer since I was a sixth grader, and so when it came out and I got to play it on it's closer to playing an actual drum kit than I think people would think.
sure,
It's a surprisingly faithful experience.
yeah. It's
And
also
Rock Band 2 just had such a good. God, what was it that I preferred about it so much over Rock Band 1? The set list was really good. The amount of songs that came on the game,
right,
the endless mode. I recall
yeah,
a friend who I am no longer friends with, and I beat the game in one night. It's an 85 song marathon,
wow,
and we beat the entire marathon mode in one sitting.
yeah.
And it was a truly great experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a few specific magical memories with Rock Band because whenever you do it and like it's like kind of the ultimate game to play with friends really. And I didn't do it a lot because we were primarily a Guitar Hero household, I will say. But I did get Rock Band later on and I think you actually could there was some crossover, like where if you had the instruments for Guitar Hero, like they worked on Rock Band, so that helped. But the I remember I had a friend come over. It's actually same friend that I played Legoland with. His name is Wesley. He came over one time and we played some Rock Band too, and that was an amazing night. Like that was like so crazy fun. And then there was another time where it was me and him and a couple of other girls that were all in the band, the high school band. We went on like a little trip, and it was just a few of us, and we were going to this college, and I can't even remember like why or like what the story was behind this, but like we ended up we like because there were so few of us, we didn't stay at like a hotel or anything. We stayed at like the house of like these people that the director knew,
Oh,
and
wow.
they had Rock Band. And that night playing Rock Band with like all of us, like where we had like the full lineup, that was amazing. And that was like the only time
Yes.
that ever happened for me. But wow, what an incredible experience that was that.
That is awesome. I had an experience in college where I went to a party where there were a whole shitload of people there.
Yeah.
And we all played Rock Band at this people's house in a rotating fashion. That's the only time I've had an experience similar to that. And I don't think that that was as cool as it would be to actually have the same like four or five people
Yeah.
playing on it the whole night and
Yeah, that's what we
switching
did.
around instruments with each other.
It was pretty awesome. And then the closest thing, so there was I had like the guitar, I think it was technically I had the Guitar Hero World Tour instruments and stuff. And then eventually we kind of just got rid of them because like I moved and mom moved and like, some of that's kind of stuff. It's hard for that to survive moves, multiple moves, especially when I wasn't there anymore. Mom's moved like a lot over the last few years. But I actually did, it was a few years ago. I just got that. I just felt like I was like, man, that was like an amazing time period, and I just want to have that experience again. So I actually went and bought all of the stuff for Rock Band and like all the games, and so I have them all now
Nice.
still. And I brought them over to Reagan's parents' house, and again, it was like we only did it like once twice because it's such a pain, obviously, to like set all that crap up. But we did do it like once, and that was also an awesome experience where like we were all doing it together. It was super cool.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So yeah,
excellent.
I kind of agree with you. Like I spent a lot more time with Guitar Hero, and like I have a lot of fond memories with that. But if I'm like putting them next to each other, like the peak of Rock Band, where you if you can actually like get everybody together like that, like it is the best of that kind of that genre and that experience that you can have.
Yeah, some peak gameplay just in general.
Yeah, yeah.
So where we're at, if if my math is correct, we've been recording for almost 2.5 hours
Oh
now,
God.
and we
Yeah.
are halfway through the list.
Okay.
Should we perhaps split this up into two episodes?
We totally could. I was honestly I was thinking about that. I know that like it's hard to get such a huge chunk of time, especially since you have a kid and stuff. And it's already it is getting kind of late. So yeah, if you want to, so we have a couple options. We can split it up into two episodes, or we can just pick it back up since I'm not going to post it yet anyway. I'm going to post Reagan's first, where we could pick it back up and I could just splice it together. With Reagan, I actually did do it where we did it across. It was all on the same day, but we did like take a break in the middle. So up to you. Like if I guess like if we come back and we record before um I would be ready to post this one, then I could put it all together at once, or I could just do the split, and it's not a huge deal for us to split it into two.
I think we can just split it into two and
Okay.
pick back up uh, either next week or since we're gonna have this episode that you'll be posting, I assume next Monday. Um,
Yes, that's the plan.
if not next weekend, then the weekend after that, we would still have time to get the other one done.
Yeah, that sounds good. Should we? So we've done that one. We only have one more, and then it would just be the top 10 left. Should we just talk about Grand Theft Auto Vice City real quick, and then make it the top 10 for the episode two?
Sure, sounds
Okay,
great.
let's do it.
All right. So number 11, Grand Theft Auto Vice City.
Okay, so this is an interesting one as well. So obviously, for people of our age, Grand Theft Auto was a massive institution that was like, everybody played Grand Theft Auto pretty much. Not me, but a lot of people did. I was kind of a late bloomer when it came to Grand Theft Auto because my mom was super strict on what I could play, and she was cracking down, and there was no way I'd be able to get away with playing Grand Theft Auto. But actually, later on, I actually did pick up the trilogy of the PS2 games, because you could kind of buy them all together in a box after they were all out. But I still never really got into the series until five was the first one that I really got into, and I played through all the way. And then I did go back and play four, and I loved that one as well. I love both GTA 5 and 4. And I feel like for me, it would be hard to go back to the PS2 games now since I didn't experience them really. I mean, I dabbled in them, but I didn't experience them really at the time and place like a lot of people did. But what about with you? Like, do you feel like that Vice City holds up in a way where it would warrant going back, or do you think it is kind of more of like that time and place thing?
I really kind of feel like it would hold up.
Oh man, do you see? I am so
I
interested. Like I feel like I would have a good time probably.
like maybe if not Vice City, then at least Vice City Stories, which is a
Oh
little more
really?
modern. And Vice City Stories, wow, really, I'm almost about to advocate for this game to being on the list instead. It has more focus on something that I like, which is the businesses aspect,
Okay.
running a business. You get into it earlier on than you do in actual Vice City. But in terms of games that I can just go back and play, beat again at basically any time, if at any point somebody said, "Hey, do you want to play some Vice City?" I would pretty much always say, "Yes, absolutely. Let's get on it right now."
Okay. So what
Um,
is it about this that makes it your favorite? Because I feel like it makes so there's a lot of people. I think what this audience was what this game was geared for, right, when it came out, because it's 2002, it's pretty early in the PS2 era. I feel like it was geared toward that audience that grew up in the 80s, and like they're like prime Grand Theft Auto time period in their life. They're like probably about the I mean, let's see, if you grew up in the 80s and it's 2002, yeah, you would probably even be younger than we are now. And like they would just be like perfectly primed to like play this game that would make them nostalgic for their childhood. But obviously you did not grow up in the 80s. So what is it about Vice
right.
City that stands out for you over like the other PS2 GTAs and of course all the other ones that have come out since then?
Quite frankly, the best justification that I may have for it is that it is the first one I played.
Okay, that'll do it. I can see
Um,
that.
I I Have played 3, have played San Andreas, played 4 and 5.
Yeah.
But Vice City, being the first one that I played, I think is just the one that I can go back to the most.
Yeah.
I'm so familiar with it. Even though at the same time, I think if I got on it, I couldn't just like cruise the streets and be like, oh yes, this is where I fucking murdered this guy with a chainsaw. But remembering there is a time where you murder someone with a chainsaw on a mission, I guess that stands out to me.
Sure.
It's just, I think frankly, this one's a big nostalgia bomb.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest strength it's got going for it in my heart.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's
So
like it's like nostalgia. Like the idea of it was to be nostalgic for people that grew up in the '80s, and now it's nostalgic for people that didn't grow up in the '80s but grew up playing Vice City. You know?
yes, yeah, it's crazy how that works out. It makes me feel almost nostalgic for '80s culture that I never experienced.
Right. Isn't
So
that interesting?
it really is, and I don't know, just Tommy Vercetti is. I don't think I would find him as funny now. I'm a much more sensitive adult than I was as a child.
Yeah.
I
Sure.
was a whole lot more into violence and debauchery and shit as a child than I am as an adult.
Yeah.
Um, so I probably wouldn't think he's so hilarious now, but as a kid, I just got the ha-has about that guy.
Yeah. Well, I can see that. And you know, another thing about Rockstar, just with the experience that I have, because like I mentioned, basically the earliest Rockstar game that I've played all the way through would be GTA 4. Well, technically it would be Bully, actually, but I have played all the way through Bully. But then so it was like Bully, then GTA 4, and basically everything since then. And like they are really great at putting you in a setting and just like really nailing that setting. So like with Bully, even like putting you in that school, like they just really got that atmosphere just like perfect. And then obviously they went on with
Mm,
the Red Dead Redemptions, and they just absolutely nailed that as well. And even the stuff that's not really supposed to be like, you know, a different time period, like GTA 4. Like GTA 4 to me is like so atmospheric, and like it really like kind of has this oppressiveness to it, and like very stylized in a way that like really sticks out to me, and it makes me nostalgic for GTA 4. Even though it's not really a game that I played like as a kid. I was an adult by the time that I played GTA 4. I'm still kind of it just has these ways of, I guess, just the way that they do their style and their atmosphere, just it just kind of they're kind of unmatched really when it comes to that compared to other games that you
yeah.
play.
Yeah, they really are. They really, God, I don't know how I could put it any better.
Yeah.
They just truly immerse you.
Yeah. Now, what are your obviously GTA 6 is on the horizon, and it is going to be in Vice City. So does that make you like, does that raise your hype level significantly just for the fact that it's going to be in the same place?
Uh, Somewhat, but honestly, I my hype level for it is already very
Yeah,
high, but
sure.
also I'm at a weird place in adulthood where my hype about any video game does not get super high because I'm like, how
Yeah.
long am I actually going to get to play this?
I know exactly what you
Uh,
mean.
but I am pretty hyped about the fact I'm hoping there are going to be some throwbacks to Vice City.
I'm
Like,
sure there will.
surely, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, how could there not be? With it being in the same location.
Right.
But honestly, before you said that, I quite frankly had completely forgotten that that was the case because it's been a
Yeah.
while. You hear so much nonsense about GTA 6 that it has kind of made me tune out because of so many like, oh, here's gameplay of it. JK, it's actually some weird leaked bullshit that nobody was supposed to see at all
Right.
and looks like complete garbage
Yeah.
from 2001.
Yeah, I do remember that. Like there were some leaks that came out, yeah. But then they had the trailer with with kind of showing off the city a little bit, and very Florida inspired. So yeah, obviously I think I'm excited for it too, being given that I've played, like I said, I've played basically all the Rockstar games since Bully, which was 2006. So that was the game after San Andreas. So realistically, it probably wouldn't be that hard for me to go back just a little bit further to San Andreas Vice City, and maybe even 3. But yeah, I know that it makes it, it's not surprising for a 30-year-old to have GTA game for the PS2 era on their, high on their list, because I think that was definitely, in terms of just like kind of going back to like what we talked about with Halo, like you kind of had to be there to well, not really, because obviously GTA is just as big today, but like for that era in particular, just like that level of freedom, again, kind of going back to what you're talking about with Dead Rising, like that was just kind of unmatched in games at that time, and like we all
Yeah.
remember that experience playing a GTA game or a GTA like game for the first time and just being able to roam around a city and just feel like you could do whatever you wanted.
Right. It was truly revolutionary. I
Yeah,
know that like MMOs already existed at that point, and that I probably could have found that experience with those too.
sure.
But as an average like mainstream fan of gaming who didn't have a PC that was good enough for that in 2002 or whatever year it was, quite frankly, was not old enough that I should have been playing Vice City when I
Right.
was.
Yeah.
I think I was a fourth grader.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people didn't play it before they were supposed to. But yeah, and therefore now, kind of like coming full circle, like I said, like now I feel like this new one, obviously it's going to capture a much wider audience than people who played the original Vice City. But I think the idea probably behind going back to Vice City is to capture some nostalgia for people that are nostalgic for Vice City, just like the people who were supposed to be playing Vice City were supposed to be nostalgic for the 80s. So they know what they're doing over there.
Yeah, good for them.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have, we've been talking a long time and we still have the top 10 to go, but I think we're going to save that for part 2 with Sean's top 25. So that's going to be something for everybody to look forward to. And I'm obviously excited about diving into Sean's actual tippy top favorite games of all time. So that'll be for, likely an episode that'll be coming up fairly soon, if not the next one. So, but until then, Sean, thanks for spending your evening with us, waxing poetic about all of these great games that you played as a kid and more recently.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it's really great I love that we're doing this series because there's so many different things that people latch onto with games, and you are a really good example because kind of like I said, I did not have any influence over the forming of your video game taste, unlike obviously Reagan, and then obviously like my brother and cousin. Whenever they come on, they're gonna be they still have their own unique takes, but definitely I have a lot more undue influence over them being the first kid. So it's nice to have
Makes
like a
sense.
third party here.
Yeah, and
Uh,
I'm glad to be that third party.
Yeah, great. All right, well, so for that to look forward to, and then other episodes of ControlledBurnes, you can keep it here. We are planning on uploading every Monday, the occasional Tuesday upload as well. But you can write in, like I mentioned at the top, you can write into the podcast and ControlledBurnes with an ES at gmail.com to have your own thoughts, questions, opinions, and ideas on the show read. And if you like what you hear, please subscribe, follow, like, review, whatever you can do where you listen to your podcast. So until then, we'll catch you down the road for next time. In the meantime, keep it warm.